All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Coming up on episode 365 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Lexus RX450h Plus plug-in hybrid, the Subaru Ascent. Updates from Hyundai's Investor Day, including plans to build the new Ioniq 9 and extended range EVs in the U.S. We've got the Volvo EX90. There's a refresh for the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Envision 74 will get into at least limited production. We've got the first drive of the Chevy Equinox. Walter P. Chrysler's descendant wants to buy the Chrysler and Dodge brands. And we have a couple of interviews with folks from Volvo and Luminar. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 365 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Nicole from Guidehouse Insights.
And I'm Nicole Wakeling from CarBuzz.
And sadly, we got a note from Robbie this morning that he's not feeling well and his voice is shot, so he's not with us.
We have no Robbie this week, so hopefully he feels better and he's back with us.
Yep,
next
I
time.
hope so.
Yeah.
Especially, hopefully, especially feels better before he has to do his next SAE podcast.
Oh, yeah. We'll hear in the podcast, I am Roberta Baldwin. We'll know. We'll know then how bad it was.
Yeah. Anyway, what have you been driving, Nicole?
I have been driving the 2024 Subaru Ascent, which was kind of fun. So 3-row SUV, and it was neat. So I happened to go out to dinner last night with my brother-in-law and his wife. And they're like, oh, we're taking the Subaru. And I don't know what they thought, but it was just like, oh, we're going to take your Subaru. Like, because we normally take the press car. But they got inside and both of their reaction, and this is the Touring, which is the top, I believe, the tippity top trim of this. I think it's the top. I have it in my head that it is. Anyway, they said the first thing they said, like, oh, this is nice. Like, I don't think
this is a Subaru?
Right. They literally did that. They're like, oh, this is nice. And then Susan sits down. She's like, oh, they have the fancy chairs. That would be captain's chairs for the technical thing. This is great. Oh, this is nice. Oh, I really like this. They were really impressed. So it was kind of, I thought it was interesting. And I just wrote a story for this for CarBuzz, and I did a comparison piece with the Honda Pilot. And the next words out of my brother-in-law's mouth, oh, so this is like the Pilot of Subarus. Matter of fact. Yes,
pretty much.
Pretty much. Good call, John. So they actually pegged it as that, but they thought it was really nice. They both really liked it, and they were very excited that there was a charging port on the back of the center console because her phone was dead. And she's like, can I plug in my phone? I'm like, right there. She's like, oh my gosh, I can plug in my phone here and I can charge. So yeah, it was, but I thought it was neat that their impression, because they probably haven't been in one. I don't think I'm having to go out with them when I've had a press car. They're very impressed with it. They thought it was really nice. And I'm like, good job, Subaru. You out Subaru'd Subaru. Like, it looked better than what they thought. So I thought that was a good thing. So 3-row SUV, it's only been around since 2019. So it's new-ish, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, they had a bigger utility back in the early 2010s, the Tribeca. Mm-hmm. Which was not a huge success. I think was there a gap between the Tribeca and the Ascent?
There was a gap. I think Tribeca was gone and then Ascent came up. I think there was a gap in the middle. I don't know how far, but I'm pretty sure there was a gap. Because I think as I remember when this came out, it was like, yay, we have a 3-row from Subaru. Like, we didn't, you know what I mean? So it was a big deal. One of the other big deals is funny. There's 19 cup holders in this thing. 19.
and only a maximum of 8 seats, so two cups for everybody.
2 cups for every person. So I feel like your biggest problem with the cup holders is not finding one, but remembering to take the kids' sippy cups out. So whatever is in there is not a science experiment when you find it in a week. Like, that could be your biggest challenge. So I like the Ascent. I think what Ascent does well is that, it's very Subaru. It looks better than expected for people who aren't familiar with the brand on the inside. It looks very Subaru on the outside. I am totally honest in that when I look at a Forester and an Outback and an Ascent, if you didn't have them like sitting butt end to me so I could see what the badge was, I do that like, wait a minute, what one is this? Like, they all look very, very similar. You talk about brands where the design is similar versus different. Like if you look at the Santa Fe and you look at other vehicles in the Hyundai lineup, or if you look like in an Ioniq 5, there's differences. Like the Hyundai vehicles don't all scream Hyundai when you look at them. Subaru, no doubt, you're looking at a Subaru, which I guess is a good thing. I mean, it appeals to the people who buy it, and it keeps it sort of a consistency within the lineup. As far as driving it, it's good, but I'm not thrilled with how it drives. It's got a 2.4 liter turbocharged engine. It has a CVT. The CVT is a little bit. Oh no, wait. Yeah, it does. But it's loud. I feel like when it's not horribly obtrusively loud, but you do notice it. So I think that's like a downside. It accelerates pretty well. Like you hit that gas pedal and it's going to get out of its own way. And one of the nice things that I do like about the Ascent is because just the way they had the design of this, feels less like a big SUV than other big SUVs. It feels a little bit more car-like in its handling. It doesn't get that rolly sort of top heavy thing that a lot of large 3-row SUVs get. And it's just, I feel like it's a more manageable 3-row. You don't know there's a 3-row. In fact, they didn't until they sat inside, like, oh my gosh, there's 3 rows in here. Like it doesn't scream 3-row SUV when you look at it. And I think that's sort of a good thing. I think it's nice to have an option that's just not outsized. But in terms of the interior, Subarus are always pretty durable. This has like a water resistant, like sort of an imitation leather that's available. There's real leather, like this one has Napa leather. There's cloth, like steam resistant cloth, but there's a range of trims. And I feel like even in this one,
apparently there's 8 different trims.
Yeah, there's a lot. But I feel like what they do well on the inside is if you want a really pretty 3-row SUV that's beautiful and gorgeous and feels luxury and elegant without actually going to a luxury car, like CX-90 or something like that. The thing is beautiful inside, right? But I'd also am afraid of the inside of that. Like I'm going to spill my coffee. I'm going to fumble my cheeseburger. The kids are going to walk across things with muddy boots. It's more nerve-wracking having a car that's beautiful and delicate when you have kids, because kids, they don't mean to be, but they're sloppy little things and they destroy stuff. If you have a 3-row vehicle, chances are pretty good that you're going to have kids in it in some point. And I feel like Subaru consistently builds interiors that you think if the kids stepped right inside here during mud season with boots caked in mud, it would survive. Or if the dog runs through the interior with muddy paws, it would survive. So I think this is like, I really like this for people who have sort of either a rugged lifestyle, like what do they call it? Active lifestyle? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Active lifestyle. Outdoorsy type, because it can stand up to that, but it's still a nice, attractive, comfortable car to ride in. And it's a heck of a value. It is. So this is the top trim of this one. Can't get it any fancier. It is $49,931. Not cheap, but this is the fancy, like this has all the stuff. There's nothing else you're really going to want to add to this. Do you want to take a guess, even though you're going to win, at what the destination is?
I'll say $1,400.
Oh, you're a little high, $1,295.
Oh, okay.
So it comes in a little bit lower. And the only extra that was on here is the all-weather floor liners, which cost $141. So that $49,000 is pretty much everything.
And that puts it in the same ballpark as, other upper mid-size 3-rows like the Pilot and the Telluride.
Right. And it does. It puts it in that price range. And what it does do, though, and I think they're changing it up this year. There's a base trim of the Ascent that is disappearing for 2025, I believe. I think they were killing one trim. So the vehicle gets a skosh more expensive, like $200 a trim or $300 a trim, but you lose the base trim. So in effect, your cheapest Ascent is now considerably higher. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And looking at it, looks like there's about let's see, for 2024, there was a $2,600 difference step up from the base to the base 8-passenger to the premium 8-passenger.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking pretty good jump in price. Although I suspect, that not many people actually bought the base trim. I mean, that's typical.
Well, and that was actually when the story I read about it, that literally is exactly what happened. Subaru's like, well, we're responding to our customers and our customers aren't buying that. So why? So for the difference between 24 and 25, there was a base trim this year that starts at, I think, about $35,000. it's gone. So now the premium 8-seater will be will be the new base trim, and it starts at 38.7. So you take a little jump. It's still an affordable price, but just losing that, if you were someone who's looking for a really inexpensive, don't care about all the bells and whistles inside your Ascent and you were thinking about it, buy it before your 24s are gone, because you're going to have to pay for the premium, which gets you more features. It's still a great value, but you just can't get it as cheap. And that's like 6, 7, 8. It's no, I guess it's a bigger increase, 36,995 for 24, and it's 38,795 for 25. So it seems a couple hundred. It's more than that. So it takes
it's about a little more than $2,000.
So it's a jump. So they shifted things around, and they do put next year, like for 25, because we're getting close to 25. So it matters. Like it's September 1st as we're recording this. They're adding another top trim. So it's funny. They drop the bottom and they add a top. It's an Onyx Edition Touring. And that one is going to be $49,995. So it's a little bit more than a couple $1,000s more than the regular Touring. So your pricing changes up on this. I still think even with that new pricing structure, it's still a good deal. Like, you have standard all-wheel drive. It's not like you're going to have to pay an extra couple thousand on top of any of those figures to get all-wheel drive. You've got great handling. They have the dual X mode, dual function X mode on the top trims, which is a few more options as far as, snow and mud and such. It is a little bit rugged. Like, you can go off-road. I mean, this is not Rubicon Trail off-road, but it's going to handle mud and muck. And if you're living in New England, where I feel like Subaru and Jeep are our cars of choice because of New England weather, you're going to be, in good shape getting through the muck that happens from January until March in any place that it's really snowy. So I like the Ascent. My only criticism, it's not especially powerful. So it gets out of its own way, but it's not aggressive. If you really like that aggressive, strong performance, you're not going to get it. And it's a little bit loud that you hear that CVT is not quiet. It's not quiet. So you do hear it. And it's not like it was back in the day, but it is still not like, I think there's a 10-speed auto in the Honda Pilot that keeps things a little quieter. This had a little bit more racket to it, but overall, I like the Ascent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had the 2024 Lexus RX450h Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So on the previous generation RX, the RX450h was just a regular old hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
On this current generation of RX that launched 2 years ago now, the regular old hybrid is now the RX350h, because the old RX450h had a V6 engine and the hybrid. Now the regular hybrid has the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and a hybrid system. And then they have the RX500h, which has the 2.4 liter turbo and the hybrid with the 6-speed automatic instead of the eCVT. And then the 450h Plus is the 350h plus. The Plus is a bigger battery and a plug.
I followed all of that.
Yeah. So this is the plug-in hybrid version of the RX450h. And the plug-in hybrid system in here is exactly what you will find in the RAV4 Prime. So it's the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated, the eCVT on the front axle, plus an extra electric motor on the rear axle to give you all-wheel drive. So a total of 304 horsepower. And then in addition to that, there is also an 18.1 kilowatt hour battery pack. And on this one, with this battery pack, it is officially rated by the EPA as being able to get 37 miles of range on a full charge of the battery, which is a few miles less than what you get with the RAV4, because this has more luxury features on it. It's a little heavier, slightly longer than a RAV4, but in my test, my usual drive loop that I do with these kinds of plug-in hybrids and BEVs and stuff, I actually managed to go 39 miles before it finally kicked out of the EV mode and reverted to standard hybrid mode. So, you're looking, some, depending on your driving, where you're driving, how you drive, somewhere between 35 and 40 miles of range on a charge, which, again, as we've talked about before, for the vast majority of people, if you get one of these, you plug it in each night, you start with a full battery in the morning, you will probably be able to get all of your daily driving done without using a single drop of gas, except for the occasional time, a few times a year, when the vehicle will start up the engine anyway, just to circulate the fuel, so that over the course of a year, it will try to use up, the full tank of gas, so the gas isn't in there indefinitely and going stale and causing bad things to happen to your engine. But that's fairly trivial. Plus, they want to circulate the oil and things like that. Just make sure things keep flowing. But for the most part, you're going to be able to do all of your daily driving on electricity alone. The amount of performance you get from this, when you're in EV mode, is because this is a plug-in hybrid. It's not an extended range EV, so you don't have the full electric propulsion power, that you might expect in EV mode, but it is more than adequate. They don't actually list the amount of power you get from the electric motor, but the engine, the 2.5 liter, I think generally produces. Let's see, in this form, in the Atkinson cycle form, they don't. See that, they don't list the power. They only list the combined power of 304. But it's going to be somewhere around probably about 125 to 130 horsepower electric, which is, so you're not going to win any drag races in EV mode with this thing, but it's adequate, to accelerate away from traffic signals, to merge with traffic. I drove it. Did highway driving, I did city driving or suburban driving, rural driving, and it actually felt just fine in EV mode because you've got all that extra torque down low. It's not, you're not really going to feel like you're particularly underpowered. And when you're in EV mode, it's even better because you don't get the engine revving up to 4,000 RPM and sitting there while you're trying to accelerate, as it would, in hybrid mode. But it's fine. It's more than adequate. This current generation of RX, visually does not look dramatically different from the previous generation of RX. The styling is actually, a pretty subtle evolution of the previous gen, except for the front end, which is kind of downplayed the whole spindle grill thing a bit, which I think most people would probably appreciate. The interior is definitely an improvement over the previous generation. So it it no longer has the absolutely atrocious Lexus touchpad system. I mean, that, if you think the Acura precision trackpad was bad, it was fantastic compared to the Lexus touchpad system.
Yeah.
That's gone. Just have a standard old touchscreen. And it's the current generation Toyota Lexus multimedia system that launched a couple of years ago. And it's basically rolled out to almost everything in the lineup now. And it's a very good system. My only complaint about the Toyota multimedia system, and in this case, it's got a 14-inch touchscreen, so it's a nice big touchscreen, is that it will not display two panes on there, so you can have navigation and the media player on the screen at the same time. So you can, it's got a vertical bar on the left-hand side, so you can toggle between multimedia, nav, settings, things like that. But you can't have nav and the media player on screen at the same time. Now, when asked, Toyota and Lexus folks will say, well, you can just use you've got a volume knob to change the volume, and you can use the voice control to change what you're playing, change what you're listening to, without having to switch away from the navigation screen. And that mostly works. It's okay. But, if what you want to do is just pause, and just reach out and tap the pause button, it's a little easier, I think.
It is.
But other than that, can't really complain too much. It does have support for wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. And if you use either of those, guess what? You can have two windows there, one with a navigation, one with your media player or whatever else. Yeah. And then one thing, if you recall, back when they did the first drive of the RX 2 years ago, I complained vociferously because all of the RXs I drove on that day, none of them would recognize my voice when I said, "Hey, Lexus."
Yes. Does that changed?
It did change. I previously had, I think, a regular hybrid and also a gas version of the RX, and that, when we did the initial drive, that was with pre-production models.
Right.
They all work now. And even this one will recognize when I say, "Hey, Lexus." But, if I'm using Android Auto, normally Android Auto is really good at recognizing what I say, and, because when you're using it, it shows, as it's transcribing your voice, it shows you what it's recognized. So, if I say, navigate to Whole Foods, it says navigate to Whole Foods, not a problem. But in this RX, it was often mangling and misinterpreting what I was saying.
Really?
Yeah, so it was not properly recognizing. And I know it's not Google Assistant, because if I try the same thing just directly on my phone,
right,
it works fine.
So it has to be something about where
I suspect there's something about the microphone.
Yeah, somehow they're placed, or the quality of the microphone in your voice.
Yeah, it doesn't like my voice for some reason. I don't know why.
I like your voice, but whatever.
A lot of people would prefer that I just keep quiet. But, that's a whole other discussion. Anyway, aside from that, I had no real issues with it. Obviously very efficient. I used very little gas in this thing. When I did, it was getting somewhere close to 40 miles per gallon in hybrid mode. The official EPA rating for hybrid mode is 35 miles per gallon. So just as with the electric range, the numbers that Lexus has submitted to EPA seem to be a little on the conservative side. But otherwise, this thing works great. It's a nice luxury SUV. Midsize, 2-row, and this time around, Lexus has not tried to stuff in an unusable third row into this thing, because they just said, okay, that wasn't working on the old RX, and they just did a bigger vehicle, which is the TX, which we've talked about previously. And
yes,
I think I actually have one scheduled next month sometime.
Oh, cool.
But and that actually has a real usable third row. But for 5 passengers in the RX, works great. Let's see. Total, there is one slight downside to the RX450h Plus.
Yes. What would that be?
$76,505.
Is it really?
Yes.
76.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot, Sam.
That's a lot for an RX.
There's a lot for an RX. 76.
Yeah, base price for the plug-in hybrid is $68,730. See the tech package with the digital key, $475. See, the big options were the premium triple beam LED headlamps for $1,565.
Okay.
So you could probably take a pass on those.
Yeah.
The $1,160 Mark Levinson premium audio system,
which is really cool. I would pay for that. If I had cash, I would do that.
And $1,420 for the convenience package, which includes the panoramic view monitor, so bird's eye display there. Traffic jam assist requires a Drive Connect subscription. You get a 3-year trial included. That's not that useful.
Yeah.
Because it only works at lower speeds, and it's a hands-off system that'll work at lower speeds. I didn't really find it particularly useful. And that's it in the in the convenience package for $1,420. So
Okay.
yeah, I'd probably take a pass on that one. So just get the audio system, leave the rest. So now you're still right around 70,000. So you're saving about $5,000. But you want to guess on the delivery charge?
Gosh, what am I looking at? A Lexus?
Yeah,
I'm going to go $1,495.
not bad. $1,350.
Okay, so it's
A
close.
little high.
Okay, little high, but I was close.
The one other thing I really liked about the this RX, the Nori green pearl paint looked
Oh, I've
fabulous.
seen that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a
Was
really
that
nice color.
extra or was that just?
That does no. It looks like that was not. There's no extra charge for the paint. It doesn't look like. Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be. This was also the Lux. So I'm not sure about the trim levels on here, but there doesn't look like there was any extra charge for the paint.
Oh, well, that's nice because that is a really pretty paint. I like that paint.
Yeah, it's very good looking, especially in the bright sunlight. Looks really great.
Very good.
But some of the other, there were some other features on here that actually, and that I've had on other Lexus and Toyota vehicles that were really good. They have the front cross traffic alert, which is a really nice feature to have. And this one had the heads up display. So if you're at an intersection, we're used to rear cross traffic alert when you're backing out of a parking space and the radar sensors are looking sideways. And if there's anybody coming down the aisle, it'll give you an alert. This is the same thing, but on the front end. So if you're at an intersection where maybe you have limited visibility, the radar sensors might be able to see and tell you if there's anybody coming, and it'll give you the alert. It'll show an arrow in the heads up display and also in the instrument cluster of where other vehicles are coming from. So helps you out there with better situational awareness. What else? I think that was the main thing.
Okay.
The rest, it's just a really nice premium vehicle, just a little on the pricey side.
Well,
But if you're able to plug in at home, but you don't feel like you're quite ready for a full battery electric yet, plug-in hybrids like this, I think, are a very viable option. Because you can get the experience of driving electric every day. And then, when you do need to take a longer trip, then you have that, that fallback position of it just being a very efficient hybrid as well.
I very much agree with that. I think there's, people, for the very long list of reasons why people aren't ready to get an EV. One of them is just, it's a big change in your mindset, having to plug in a car and it does in your head seem like a weird thing to do. And the plug-in hybrid is a great midway. Like, okay, I can start to see how this electric thing works. I can start to see about getting something installed at my house maybe and seeing how it is to drive something that has, you can drive just as an electric vehicle without the anxiety or just the nervousness of like, what if I hate this? What if I hate this? Now I just bought a new car and I have to plug it in all the time. Well, if you don't like it, you still have the gas engine. You can, you have that. So it's a nice little in between to get used to it and to sort of try it out without being fully committed. I know people will talk about plug-in hybrids being, not the most, from an engineering point of view, the best choice because you have the gas engine and you have the electric motor. So you've kind of got like two systems in there to maintain and work together. But I still think it's a great, take that out of the equation. It's a great option just from a consumer point of view to try living with an electric vehicle.
Yeah. And, again, I warn you that if you don't have someplace where you can plug in, then please don't buy a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
Don't waste the money. Don't waste the resources of building a bigger battery. If you're not actually able to plug it in on a daily basis,
Right.
If you can, great. If you can't plug in, just get the regular RX plug-in or the regular RX hybrid, because that, is basically the same thing. Still really efficient. You're still going to get close to 40 miles per gallon, in normal driving, which for a vehicle of this size is pretty amazing.
It's very good.
And you're not wasting money and resources on, a bigger battery.
Mhm.
But if you can plug in and you're interested in, taking that first step, the stuff like this or the RAV4 Prime, Prius Prime, or, many of the other plug-in hybrids that are out there, great first step to get you used to plugging in.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to try.
And just confirmed, the Nori Green Pearl is
Yeah.
not an extra cost option.
Wow.
It's the same price.
It's such a pretty color and such a different color. It feels like one of those you'd be like, yeah, that's an extra.
Interestingly, the one that is extra cost,
Yeah.
Eminent White Pearl.
White is extra for shiny white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also the Cloudburst Gray and the Iridium.
What's Iridium? Is that blue? That's blue, right?
It's a gray.
Oh, it's a gray. Okay.
So the Cloudburst Gray is a dark gray. Iridium is more silvery gray.
Isn't that funny? The most basic of basic colors cost extra, but the fancy colors not so much.
So again, we urge you, buy interesting colors.
Yes.
Don't buy monochromatic vehicles. Buy interesting colors, because Lexus will actually charge you less for it.
Right?
You can
buy the fancy color and save money.
Yeah, you can save $500 if you buy an interesting color.
Yes.
There's a very nice red that they have, the Matador red mica, also a fantastic color. Copper crest.
Oh, that's a pretty color too, and it's really different. Like it's not the same. I'm like playing with a paper airplane.
I was just gonna ask.
I was folding something, and I was just like you doodle. I was folding. It's a paper airplane that I was just folding as I was sitting here chatting.
Yeah, they actually have 4 really fantastic colors on the RX this year. The Matador red mica, the Copper crest, the Nori Green Pearl, and the Nightfall mica, which is a blue, which is a really lovely blue as well. So get one of those. Skip the monochrome.
Don't get the boring colors. Get a pretty color. Get cars in pretty colors. They make the world happier.
Yeah, and save yourself some money.
And save yourself a few dollars.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk, because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. All right. What else we got for this week? Shall we start with Volvo or Hyundai? Because there's a lot of Hyundai stuff.
Let's do some Hyundai. There's a lot of Hyundai. Apparently this was Hyundai week.
Yes. Did you go out? You didn't go out to Los Olivos, did you?
No, I did not.
All right. So there was a couple of things that happened past week. There was a drive program, and can't quite tell you about all of that stuff yet. The embargoes on that. We'll talk about the drive impressions on those vehicles next week. But the day before I was out there to drive, Hyundai held an investor day in South Korea, announced a whole bunch of stuff. And then while I was in California, they also announced details on the 2025 Ioniq 5. So let's start with the investor day stuff.
Okay. I'm going to click on the right link. There's 85 Hyundai links in our show notes.
So on the investor day, there was several main themes that they talked about. First of all, Hyundai is not, unlike some other automakers, most notably Ford, Hyundai is not backing away from their EV strategy. They still are targeting selling 2 million EVs by 2030. And also growing their overall sales to over 5.5 million units by 2030.
Wow. That's a 30% increase from last year, just to give that 5.55 million. How much more is that? 30% more than what they sold last year. So 30% increase in 7 years.
Yeah. So they're targeting, they're already a top 5 global automaker. And I think they're targeting being top 3 by 2030. So they're still doing all the electric stuff. They did announce, let's see. They announced they're also expanding their hybrid lineup, and essentially what Hyundai is doing is for vehicles that have an engine, a hybrid is basically going to become the default for anything that still uses gas. So they're going from 7 to 14 hybrid models, including Genesis. So Genesis is going to get its first hybrid models in the next few years. They're also launching an EREV platform, an extended range EV platform, which is kind of distinct from a traditional plug-in hybrid. So what we think of today generally as a plug-in hybrid is stuff like that Lexus RX, where the engine torque and the electric motor torque are blended and sent to the wheels, and it can operate in electric mode only. Or it can operate, with both power sources driving the wheels. In an EREV, this is more like what Stellantis is doing with the Ram Charger, and what there's a bunch of these now in China as well, and we're going to see more from other manufacturers in the next couple of years. Here, the engine is only connected to a generator. It has no mechanical connection to the wheels, so all of your propulsion comes from the electric motors. And then the engine is used as your battery depletes. The engine can run to keep your battery charged. And they haven't said what vehicle this is going to be in or exactly when, but hints I heard, somewhere in the 2026, 27 timeframe. Okay. And, it'll probably be on larger vehicles. So stuff, like, the Palisade or the Telluride. Yeah. They also want to have 21 full battery electric models by 2030.
How many do they have right now?
Let's see. Across the brands, Hyundai's got Kona, Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, Ioniq 9 is coming. And then, so that's 4. Kia has EV6 and EV9, and then EV3 and EV4 coming. So that's 8. Yeah. And the Niro, that's 9. Oh,
Niro, yeah.
And so that's the 9 altogether. And then 2 from Genesis with the GV60, or 3 from Genesis, GV60, GV70 electrified, and G80 electrified. So that's 12.
So they're more than halfway there already.
Yeah. So they plan to be at 21 by 2030.
Okay.
They're developing some new battery tech and new safety technology, including a new NMC batteries that they're developing in-house. And one of the things they talk about in here is I think it was with the possibly with LFP batteries. I don't know if it was with NMC, but adopting cell to vehicle architecture. So this is like what BYD is doing on the Seal, where there's not actually a separate battery pack box. Essentially, you've got an indentation in the floor pan of the car. You put the cells in there, and then you put a bottom plate on it, and that's it. And so you can pack in more cells in the smaller space and get more range out of it. So they're going to be shifting to that. That lowers costs, improves range, makes the whole thing more practical.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think it's neat that I think they have a good strategy. I like this sort of, but it's interesting, the electrification thing. It's not, I think there's this initial sense of like everyone's going to have an EV and every other kind of potential propulsion system is gone, just straight up electric vehicles. And that's not really what they're doing. It's electrification, which is a little different than purely electric,
Yeah. They're adding some electric propulsion to everything they build.
Yeah.
And they already have, probably apart from Toyota, I think they probably already have more hybrid models than anyone else anyway, certainly in the US market.
Probably that seems about right. Yeah.
They offer hybrids in a lot of their models already across Genesis or across Hyundai and Kia.
Yeah.
And, they're adding Genesis to that, adding additional models. So, everything that doesn't have a battery only is, basically everything's going to have a battery and electric motors to varying degrees.
Yeah.
And then they're also continuing their focus on automated driving as well. So Hyundai is 85% owner of Motional, which is a company that is developing automated driving systems. And they announced as part of this investor day an autonomous vehicle foundry business.
Yeah, I saw that. Foundry. I know foundry makes me think of like somebody's making steel in a giant foundry, but I know that's not what they do.
So the way I read this, and I've reached out to Hyundai, and they're not ready to talk in more detail about this yet. But my understanding of this is what they want to do is build vehicles that have the hardware for automated driving capabilities, so all the sensing, the compute, and everything, so that companies like Motional and others can take advantage of those and develop their automated driving software on those platforms. So you'll have all of the redundancy that you need, all the safety stuff that's needed in there, and still be able to, and just sell these, so that others can put their software in it.
Which should be neat. I mean, that's an interesting way to expand on the business and to provide something that not everybody's going to be able to develop as easily on their own. If they develop it and it works and others can benefit from it and they can make some money from it, then why the heck not?
Yeah. And in a way, Stellantis, actually, while it was still Fiat Chrysler, was one of the first to do this with the Pacifica plug-in hybrid.
Right.
Waymo back in 2016 bought a bunch of Pacificas from FCA and used those, as their second or third generation development platform they were using those also, as they launched their robo-taxi services in Arizona. They've now phased those out in favor of the Jaguar I-Paces, and then soon adding in the Zeekr little robo-taxi vehicles. But after FCA worked with Waymo to develop the first iteration of that, because what Waymo had originally wanted to do was just buy a bunch of vehicles directly from FCA instead of buying them one or two at a time from local dealers. They went to FCA and said, "Hey, look, we want to buy a whole bunch of these. Can we do a deal?" And so they worked with their fleet operations and bought a bunch of them. And FCA said, "Okay, well, if you're going to buy a bunch of these to use in this way, instead of you having to go in and hack every one of them and tap into all the wiring harness and everything, we will work with you and develop, do the hardware integration for you." So they developed a custom wiring harness that they put in on the assembly line that didn't have to be modified by Waymo. It was just, a lot more plug and play to put in their sensors and their computers. And they added the redundancy, so redundant steering, redundant braking capabilities to provide the safety factors that are needed for an automated vehicle. And then they started offering that to other companies doing the same thing. So a bunch of companies, including Motional, before they got their Hyundai vehicles, Aurora Innovation, AutoX in China, and quite a few others were getting these AV-ready Pacificas. Toyota also offers a version of the Sienna, basically the same thing, the Sienna Autonomous, that they offer to companies that want to do AV development. So it becomes basically plug and play. And I think that's what Hyundai is doing here. But I think Hyundai is planning to do it, as the technology is becoming more mature. Hyundai is intending to do this at more scale. So Chrysler and Toyota were doing this, for hundreds to low thousands of vehicles.
Right.
I think Hyundai wants to do this for tens of thousands to hundreds of thausands of vehicles.
The scale is much larger. It's, the application. Yep.
And I think one of the vehicles that we're going to see used for this at CES this year, Kia showed off a range of commercial vehicles. They including a smaller, sort of a mid-sized van type of vehicle, smaller than the Pacifica, called the PV5. And at the time, I talked with the CEO of Motional during CES, and he said, yeah, that was what they were planning to use for their next generation. Because right now, Motional is using the Ioniq 5. They were planning to use the PV5 for their next generation vehicle. And I think that will probably be the platform that Hyundai is going to use for their autonomous vehicle foundry business.
Makes sense. Yeah, that seems sensible.
And they're also doing a lot more with software-defined vehicles. They talked about something called an SDV pace car equipped with high-performance vehicle computer in 2026. Not entirely clear what all that entails. We'll see.
This is like the thing is with these days like this, like there's just enough detail to make you sort of say, "What? That's so cool. What else?" No,
I reached out. They haven't said if they're willing to talk in more detail about that yet.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get something. And then continuing with their fuel cell stuff that they're doing, expanding the fuel cell system lineup, and a lot of focus on commercial vehicles there. I
don't see hydrogen fuel cell taking off here anytime soon.
Not for consumer vehicles.
For consumers, no. Like as a fleet solution, possibly, but not as I just don't see it. It feels like one of those dead in the water things. It's not happening.
Yeah. Although, Nikola's starting to gain some good traction with their fuel cell trucks. I think they've delivered about 250 of them now.
Yeah.
They've got several fueling stations at various depots and ports and things like that. Hyundai has, I think, 36 of their Exient fuel cell trucks that are running near the Port of Oakland.
Okay.
Toyota's got a bunch that are running in Port of Long Beach and Port of LA. I think we're starting to see some traction for heavy duty fuel cell. For longer haul vehicle electrification with tractor trailers. Yeah, consumer vehicles, no, it's not going anywhere.
Not going to happen. Yeah, no time soon is that going to change. Yeah.
Any other thoughts you got on the Investor Day?
No, but I think it's interesting to see because I feel like you were saying how Hyundai's aiming to be what top 3. You think it's interesting to see like, okay, this is our big picture of how we're going to get there. I'll be curious to look back at this kind of thing, in 3 to 5 years. How close are they going to come to hitting these? Because these are always, some of this they'll hit and some of this is amazing and other stuff is not going to happen. Nothing comes through exactly the way the OEM spec. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this comes to fruition in a few years.
Yeah. Oh, I did find a little more in here on the EREV, the extended range EVs. It does say they plan to begin mass production of the EREV in North America and China by the end of 2026.
That's not that far.
No. And, among the things that they said that they also announced on Wednesday was that the Ioniq 9, which is their equivalent to the Kia EV9, so a 3-row SUV, will be produced in their new plant in Savannah, Georgia. That vehicle is launching in 2025. It says for the EREV, the company will initially launch D-Class SUV models of Hyundai and Genesis brands. So it could be that there will be an EREV version of the Ioniq 9 and also a Genesis equivalent of that, which we haven't seen anything yet, but will presumably be something like a GV90 for, that's electric for Genesis. What else we got in here?
A lot of Hyundai information in that little CEO day.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot. And also, really a lot more focus as well on more affordable EVs. And we've already seen the EV3 and EV4. Those are coming soon.
And I really think that's really important too, because a lot of folks who are interested in EVs look at the price of the one that they want and the options are out there. And if it's just too much, it puts us out of your budget. Even if you're really interested in trying to go electric, if your budget is 35 and the EV that works for you is 65, it's not going to happen. You just can't do it,
And they're, Hyundai Motor Group is definitely targeting, $30,000 and under EVs as well. And my guess is they will be, probably the first to offer something really viable and appealing at that price point.
I wish that Volvo had come through with the EX30 over here.
Yeah, well, it's still coming. It's just
I know, but
not till next year.
Yeah, I'm making it sound like it's canceled. I wish they managed to get that over here when it was supposed to be over here.
Yeah.
Like last year, I think it was supposed to be over here. So we're way off on that. And I understand it's market conditions and such that make that happen. But it's like, oh, that was a good one. People would have liked that one.
And you went to the New York show, right?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay.
For this year, no, I didn't.
Okay, so you didn't see the GV60 Magma concept that they showed?
I saw pictures of it. Yeah, I did not see it live and in person. Yeah.
Well, that will, according to Hyundai, that will open a new chapter of high performance luxury by providing high performance models that maximize quality and performance. So this will be, Genesis version of the N brand. And N brand will also continue to expand its high performance EVs. So, the GV60 Magma is coming to production. And we will almost certainly see other Magmas from Genesis over the next several years.
I'm excited for those because I think it's probably going to be stupidly fun to drive those things.
Yeah. I've driven the Ioniq 5N briefly and got it coming for a little more time in a few weeks. Definitely a lot of fun to be had there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Let's see what else. Okay, so let's.
Want to switch companies?
Yeah. Well, no. Let's do all the Hyundai stuff.
Okay. So what else do we have?
Tell us about the Envision 74.
Oh, so we have the Envision 74. So this was also something that was mentioned, kind of, sort of, in the course of this CEO Investor Day. So the Envision 74 concept came out, I want to say about 2 years ago. I think it's 2 years ago.
Yeah,
December.
I think it was 2 years ago in Goodwood or somewhere.
So we're about 2 years out from that concept. And since that time, it has been the most would they or will they or won't they vehicle ever. We're not going to build it. We are going to build it. Well, maybe we'll build it. No, we're definitely not. Absolutely, we're not producing this. We'd love to produce this. Well, it was listed in the CEO Investor Day. They had, when they were talking about their plans for all the new models by 2030, the Envision 74 was on the list as actually happening from this little event. So as of how many days ago, they are making it. It didn't go into exactly what it would be. It was listed as a high performance EV. So we don't know what that means. Now the concept was a hydrogen vehicle. It had 679 horsepower, 633 pound-feet of torque, depending on the source that you look at. I swear to God, even in Hyundai stuff, the numbers change, but you get it. Powerful, fast performance car. So we're going to get something in those vein that it's going to be, I would assume that it's going to be super powerful. There was also talk about, and again, it was the rumor mill, but it wasn't confirmed, is that it was going to be an 800 horsepower vehicle with a production run of about 100 units, and only like 30 of those were going to be, like 70 were going to be for on-road use and 30 were going to be for racing use. There's all these rumors. So really all we know is it's coming. Yay. What is it? No idea. But I think it's cool because I really hope it looks like what the concept looks like. Like it borrows like around the headlights, the sort of little square design that you see like in the
pixel
Ioniq
design.
5. Yeah, the little pixel design. It has that pixel design, which is something Hyundai is already using. It makes me think of Minecraft on the headlights. I can't help it, but it looks really neat. The whole style of this is sort of this retro 70-ish kind of thing, the way that it's designed. It looks fabulous. And I don't know how much of this will actually make it through because you just don't know with a concept car. Sometimes they look very close to what they were, and other times they look radically different. So you would never know the concept from which the production car is born. I'm hoping it looks like this because I think it looks fantastic.
Well, for what it's worth, the production Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6 are not that far off the concepts that were shown like 5-6 years ago.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they build something that's very close to this concept.
I know.
And especially if they're only going to build 100 of them.
But again, all this is like rumor. Our confirmation is it was on the list at the CEO Investor Day as a high performance EV. That is literally the entirety of the confirmed. Everything else is like, we'd like this. We speculate that. We think maybe. So beyond that, anything you read is not confirmed and we have no idea. Is it coming? Yes. High performance EV? Yes. By 2030? Yes. And anything else? Your guess is as good as ours.
And, for those not familiar, the concept, this concept, before Hyundai got into volume vehicle production back in the 1970s, Hyundai's first concept was the Pony Coupe that was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro. And at that time, it was very much, they're very much into the whole wedge design thing. He was also designed cars like the original VW Scirocco and Golf and the Lotus Esprit. And this is very much, that 1974 Hyundai concept was very much in that same vein. That's that same kind of aesthetic. And this new concept, the Envision 74, is, kind of what, if you took that 1974 concept and, applied, modern GT3 racing rules to it, racing GT3 aerodynamics to that 1974 concept car, this is kind of what you would get. Yeah. I do hope they build something like this, maybe offer it, the track version or the racing versions, as a, homologated as a GT3 race car, because it would be fun to see something like this going up against, Mustangs and Corvettes and Porsche 911s and,
cool.
and Ferrari 296s.
Yeah. I'm excited for this, and I'm hoping it's closer to now, not 2030. I'm like 2030. Yeah. That's a long ways. That's 5-6 years away, depending on how you cut it. I'm like, no, make that, because there's no idea for anything they previewed. They were very unclear about. It's just like by 2030. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff they talked about, that's coming by 2026. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
It's like the EREV, coming in 2026.
Sooner. I want this to be on the list of sooner. I really, really do.
Yeah. All right. One last Hyundai related item.
Yes.
While I was out there to drive the new Tucson, or the refreshed Tucson, I should say, we got a look at the 2025 Ioniq 5, which is also getting a mid-cycle refresh.
Okay.
And if you recall, a couple of months ago, I talked about when I visited my local supercharger station with the Mach-E Rally. seeing an Ioniq 5 and an EV6 wrapped in camo that were being tested, charging there at that supercharger. And when I walked over and took a closer look, they had NACS charging ports on them.
I remember.
CCS. And that's now confirmed that the 2025 Ioniq 5 and almost certainly the EV6 and other Hyundai Motor Group EVs will be switching to a native NACS port when they start their 2025 model year. The Ioniq 5 is the first vehicle confirmed to be produced at Hyundai's new plant in Georgia. And, talking about Hyundai moving fast, back in 2022, early 2022, they first announced this plant in Georgia, that they were building this plant that they call the Meta plant. So there's an assembly plant and a battery plant there. And at the time when they first announced it, it was supposed to start production about a year from now, mid-2025. Well, when the IRA was passed that summer, Hyundai, within a couple of weeks, announced, yep, we're going to pull ahead construction of that factory. We want to start production by Q4 of 2024. And they pulled it ahead by 9 months.
Yeah,
and,
which is not insignificant. That's a big deal. Yeah.
And so they've already been doing pre-production of at least Ioniq 5s and probably EV6s there. Kia hasn't made any announcements yet, but I'm pretty confident that because the EV6 is also getting a mid-cycle update this year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm pretty confident they'll be building both of those in quick succession. So the regular Ioniq 5 is going to start production early October, so about a month from now. And in addition to the NACS port, there's some, the usual kind of modest updates to the to the front fascia, the rear fascia. Mm-hmm. The biggest interior change is on the center console. The Ioniq 5 has that sliding center console. Mm-hmm. So you can move it forward and back. They have rearranged the front part of that. So currently on the current Ioniq 5s, there's a storage area. So it's kind of U-shaped. So you got the armrest under your elbow, and then it dips down to near the floor and comes back up. And then there's the two cup holders there. Well, they've rearranged that part. Instead of the two cup holders being side by side, they're now one behind the other and they've made that whole thing a little bit larger. And you now have the wireless phone charger next to the cup holders. So a little more convenient there instead of having the wireless charger down on the floor. And then on the center, on the dashboard below the touchscreen, they've rearranged a few of the buttons, but it's still the same basic design, which was good. There was nothing wrong with that. And then they changed the color of the bezel around the two screens from white to black. But that's not actually the biggest news. They're adding a new variant of the Ioniq 5 for model year 2025.
Okay.
It's getting an XRT version.
Ooh.
That's Hyundai's branding for their more off-roady vehicles.
Okay.
So if you can't wait until 2026 for a Rivian R3X, Hyundai might have you covered.
And they can take care of that for you.
Yeah. So, it's got some suspension mods, about a 1-inch, just shy of 1-inch lift, some bigger all-terrain tires, some pretty cool looking wheels, with the openings in the wheels are square, like the pixels, so you got that whole pixel aesthetic now applied to the wheels that, looks pretty neat. And then different front and rear fascia. And again, it's done in black plastic on the front and the rear. And on the front bumper, you've got the embossed pixels in there. It's got recovery hooks with like a 5,800 pound capacity. So, if you do manage to get it stuck somewhere, or perhaps if one of your friends gets stuck and you need to help them out, you can hook up and pull them out. Then the other thing is, and I was talking to one of the designers, one of the neat elements of this black plastic, so you get the black plastic front and rear bumpers and the cladding around the wheels. On most vehicles, when they do that, it's usually just smooth black plastic, not very interesting, just unpainted plastic. What the Hyundai designers have done is they have got, one of these digital camouflage schemes that you've probably seen, and that's embossed on all of that black plastic. So it's got some texture to it, and when you look at it, when the light hits it, you can see that camo theme on there. So it gives it a little more interesting look to it. And then for all of the Ioniq 5s for this year, they get a battery upgrade. So they go from let me make sure. Let me double check this to make sure I got the right numbers here. They go on the standard version. The standard range version goes from where the heck is it? Reports. Oh, here we go. From 58 to 63 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
And then the extended range versions go from 77.4 to 84 kilowatt hours.
Will that be did they give you a range difference?
Yes. So the 303 mile range for the rear wheel drive models with the extended battery now goes to over 310. So they're still waiting on the official numbers, but they said it'll be at least 310.
Okay.
And the standard range goes from 220 to 240 miles. Which makes it considerably more useful.
That's a big, it's like it's the extended range. That's a little bump, but that's a big deal. Yeah. And
then the all-wheel drive versions will go between 250 and 280 plus miles.
Okay. So that's nice.
So between 10 to 20 miles of extra range.
Yeah.
Which is always a good thing. And the battery chemistry is the same as before, but what they've done is re-architected the battery pack, the internals of the battery pack, so they're able to put more cells in there.
Okay.
So a little better packaging efficiency.
Okay.
No word on pricing yet. One interesting detail, with the Fords and the Rivians that now have support for the Tesla charging network and have adapters available. With those, the adapters only work for DC charging. So, the way they're set up, they only have the wires going through on the two big ports for DC charging. So you cannot use those adapters for AC charging. So you can't plug in at a Tesla destination charger, which a lot of hotels and restaurants and stuff have those. There's almost 5,000 of those around the country.
Oh, that's kind of a stinker.
Yeah. There's 4,800 locations with destination chargers, 12,000 chargers.
Okay.
However, because the NACS port is native on the Hyundais and is there for everything, they will work with destination chargers. And those work at up to 20 kilowatts in many cases.
All right.
So it'll be the first non-Tesla vehicle that can use destination chargers. That's very
cool. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
On the XRT, it's getting the same all-wheel drive setup as regular Ioniq 5s now. So that means 320 horsepower from the two motors. So not yet the 640 horsepower of the 5N, but talking to a couple of Hyundai people, they said, there's no reason we couldn't do that. And
we aren't, but I mean,
nothing has been approved for production in terms of a 5N XRT. But he said, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the N team over in Korea has a couple of mules running around with the 5N drivetrain in the XRT. So that could be good for a few laughs. That would be your real R3X competitor.
Yeah.
640 horsepower off-roady Ioniq 5.
I would take that.
Yeah.
That would be a fun car to drive.
Oh, one more detail about the new front and rear fascias. Part of what they were doing there with the combination of the extra ride height and the recontouring of the front and rear end, the approach angle for, so if you are going off-road, I mean, this is not going to be a Wrangler or Bronco style rock crawler,
Right.
But the approach angle is now increased by 2.3 degrees to 19.8 degrees, and the departure angle goes from 25.4 degrees to 30 degrees. So it will have definitely more capability to hit some rougher trails, but not not the really hardcore stuff.
Still, that's kind of cool. It's neat. It's exciting to see this stuff come out. I like what they're doing. This could be fun. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And and just in case you thought maybe you might have to wait like another year for the XRT,
How long?
the XRT will be following the standard Ioniq 5s by about 3 weeks. So by the end of October, they will be building XRTs.
So pretty much back to back. That's amazing. Woohoo!
And they'll both be on sale. They'll be at Hyundai dealers before the end of the year.
Wow, that's quick.
And to start with, the Georgia-built Ioniq 5s will, if you want to buy, they will be eligible for $3,750 in tax credits because they haven't yet fully sourced all of the components. So they've got the cells coming from, I think from SK in Georgia, but some of the other battery pack components are still being imported. As they localize more of that component production, then eventually it'll get to the full $7,500 tax credit.
So if you held on for a bit, potentially,
or if you want to lease, you can get the $7,500 right away.
Okay, that's pretty neat. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, so that's the updated Hyundai Ioniq 5, and except for the XRT stuff, probably all of that will also apply to the EV6. And I would the Ioniq 9, which is going to be built in Savannah next year, is also getting the NACS port. So it's good stuff.
That's very good stuff.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff. Yeah.
I think that's all the Hyundai news we have for this week.
I know. I literally just looked like, is there more Hyundai or is that it? Welcome to the Hyundai podcast.
All right. Let's talk about the Volvo EX90.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right.
So Volvo EX90. So I'm kind of excited this one's actually here because like I was just saying, the EX30 has not quite made its way here yet, but the EX90 is making its way here. Although if you look on the website, did you look? If you try and build one now, it says I looked Friday. It was telling me 4 to 8 months. So I don't know what's that all about. But the EX90 is their 3-row SUV, and it's a fully electric vehicle. I was really pleasantly surprised by how much I liked this. I didn't think I would dislike it. I mean, we both did the first drive, Sam, so it was you got your first taste of it. It's not like either one of us spent a ton of time in the vehicle. You're just spending a day. They intend this to be like the flagship of the Volvo lineup. It has all-wheel drive. There's two different two different power variants. I'm going to say engine till my dying day because I've said it for so long. A range of from 300 to 310. They actually upped it slightly from what they initially told.
That's in kilowatts.
Yeah.
Horsepower, it's 402 and 510.
Oh, what did I say range? I was trying to say
300.
For range.
Oh, for range. Oh, sorry, for range.
Did I say power? I meant to say range. Okay, sorry, not power, range. 300 and 3 to 310. So they upped the range slightly from what they initially had told us. So because they got official EPA numbers, and they're already started production. They're planted in South Carolina. It's in production, so it
started in June.
Yeah, so they're well underway there. The interior is still very. Although this is new and design wise they move forward, it's not this giant leap of change. It's this small iteration on what Volvo has done, which they build these very minimalist, very attractive interiors. But they're not flashy. They're not overwrought. They don't, it keeps that whole, like, we're going to be calm and clean and collected and our luxury is subdued and not like I'm driving a luxury car. They're very nice. I liked how this looked inside. I thought it was a really good job. Did you see this sort of, I forgot what they call the lights now, the daytime sort of backlit lights? Did you see how those look, Sam? Did you have a chance to see those?
Yeah.
What did you think?
The way it opens up?
Yeah, well, just
like
the
a
light.
clamshell?
Well, no, just the lighting on the inside. They have.
That.
No,
it didn't really get a chance to see that.
Okay, they call it sun-like LEDs is what they call them. There's 72 of them throughout the interior. And the idea is that the lights they use in most vehicles, it's slightly pulsing, reflecting. Look, you take a picture of something and you can see the lights moving. But
Yeah,
when you
because
look at
LEDs, the way LEDs are controlled, it flickers. It
right,
uses pulse width
and
modulation. So
you don't see it. You don't consciously see it when you look at it. But those LED lights are ever so slightly flickering. These sunlight LEDs are supposedly not supposed to do that, or they change the frequencies of the light. So basically, it feels more like natural light to your eyes. So one of the things it'll do is it won't mess with like your circadian rhythm. It's not supposed to make you as tired. So it's a different way to use light, and it's sort of like what's this like backlit dashboard effect. It's really cool. If you look through there, you have to look, Sam. They have some pictures of it in
yeah,
their
I
media
did see
kit.
that. Yeah.
It's really kind of freaky and like the best way. It looks really, really cool. So I appreciate that sort of like glowy, warm light that they've given to the inside. So I really like from a style and design point of view, I liked it. What did you think from that angle, Sam?
I liked it a lot. I think the interior is gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
typical, Volvo, clean but really nice materials, really well executed. I also really like the little. I don't know if you noticed the little there's the metal trim that spans all the way across the dashboard
Yeah.
on the passenger side, just below the vent. The little Swedish flag that's
I
embossed in there.
missed that. I saw the little flag that's on the seats. I didn't know there was one on the vent too. I missed that.
Yeah. Here, I'll
Because they do have, if
drop
you
that in
look
the
at
chat
the
for you.
seats, there's a teeny tiny little Swedish flag that's sort of like stitched into the trim, like a little tab on the seats that looks, it's just kind of a neat thing. But I didn't see the one. I missed the one that was on the dashboard. I love little things like that. I think those are nice little touches. They make a car feel special. So, okay, come on, load it up to, I can't see it.
It's not letting me.
Oh, well, once you get it.
Wait, here we go. Let's try this one. Let's try the chat instead of the comments.
Okay,
There we
that
go. So yeah, that I thought a lot of nice stuff there. The wood, the sort of blonde wood look. I think really looks very premium.
so cool. I see the flag. Now I've managed to open the chat and see it. Oh, that looks neat. I completely missed that when I looked at it. That looks really cool.
They have, maybe gone. I mean, Volvo's been moving towards, more stuff in the touchscreen, and having fewer controls on the current generation of internal combustion models, and that continues here. But one thing that I did like a lot is that they moved the shifter from the center console to the steering column, so stock on a steering column.
I liked that, but I found it a little bit weird. Finicky. Yeah, how's that? I guess that's a good word. Finicky. And I don't like it when I wasn't super keen on it. I like that they freed up space on the center console, but the placement there was a little.
Yeah, the issue that we had with the shift selector was not so much its location or anything like that. It was if we, because the EX90 has phone, has digital key, so you get phone as a key capabilities, and it's using ultra wideband as for better security, and so they gave each of us a phone to use as the key for the car, and there's a wireless charging pad right at the leading edge of the center console. And so what we did was we would get in the car, just leave the phone in there, and you just never touch it again for the rest of the day. But what we found was when we stopped to take pictures, we left that in there. We hop out of the car, put it in park, hop out of the car. A couple of minutes later, get back in, and it didn't want to go back into drive or reverse out of park. And I talked to the Volvo people, and I said, yeah, they're still doing some tuning there. I think it's part of the security measures, so if you leave the phone in there and you get out, you close the doors.
We also had some issues with that phone is key, and it's like, so you should be able to just walk up to the car too, and it should know you're there, and it should pop open when you have your phone. You can pop open and it wasn't working as prescribed as it was supposed to. And then you could theoretically, like in your Apple Wallet, you can have essentially a key card in there. And if you have trouble with it recognizing your phone, you can go to your wallet, pull up a key there, and hold that by the door, and it should open. And I was having some trouble. I'm going to be honest, I didn't understand the entire explanation, but they were saying it had something to do partly with them trying to have us have these phones that weren't our phones, that weren't keyed to an official customer account. There was some confusion there.
Yeah.
It was partly due to stuff that the average consumer would not experience. So I'm almost like hesitant to mention it, except that it drove us all nuts.
Yeah.
And I really want to just have it in my driveway and drive it, like see if it changes. Like if I create a little account and do it, like, will this, I wish they had created a bunch of like real accounts and just said, here's your phone. Today, you're customer Y and you're driving this car, because I think it made it a little wonky. I want to say that's going to work better for customers once they get their hands on it.
Yeah. I hope it does. I mean, we'll find out eventually.
We'll find out eventually. And I also, something I wanted to mention about the interiors. They have something, they don't use leather. Volvo's going away from leather because they're trying to get to sustainable.
Nordico, I think they call it.
Something called Nordico, which is a synthetic leather. And for the most part, it looks like, it's not leather, but it doesn't look like vinyl from 1985. It has a decent look. But I talked to one of the Volvo folks about the choice to not do leather and what they're considering to be a flagship SUV. Like the Gary, I just forgot his last name. He's like their future design guy. And he had said, well, we're not ruling it out forever till the end of time. If they find that customers are really saying to Volvo, you know what, guys, we really want leather. I want the option to have a Napa leather seat in my vehicle. They would consider it because they're very conscious of the fact that this is not a cheap vehicle, not even within the Volvo lineup. It's a pricey vehicle and people want a premium experience. And if they determine, that good old focus group, okay, leather is something that customers want, they would consider it. So at least, because I like leather interiors. I think they add something that imitation leather interiors don't quite capture. And I understand the sustainability, but I wonder how many people feel the same way. So it's not completely no forever to that kind of thing, just no for right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Gary Calcaria, who's the
Thank you. I lost his last name, Gary Calcaria. I had a lovely interview. I actually interviewed him and put up the interview on CarBuzz. We talked about a bunch of different stuff about the hybrids and about the interiors and what their strategy is. And he was fantastic to talk to. And that was one of the things that he had told me.
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time talking to him over dinner, or dinner or lunch. And so a lot of good information from Gary.
Yeah. He had my favorite description of how he described the EX30 and the EX90. He said the EX30 is a little shot of espresso and the EX90 is the full cappuccino, like to describe the difference between the two. I'm like, I love that. Now I'm going to think of it as a cup of cappuccino forever.
This is a 3-row SUV, but that third row, a little tight.
It's tight. I was with another journalist, Morgan Korn. I think Morgan's about my height, maybe a little taller. She hopped back there and she's like, oh, okay. And like I was standing outside the car and her knees are bent at this ridiculous angle. And like it is a short trip vehicle for the third row unless you're a kid. Yeah. Pretty much.
And to their credit, Volvo says, the third row is really limited to about 5'6", 5'7". So if you're any taller than that, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm 5'6", and I could sit back there, but I thought I wouldn't want to sit back here for anything other than like, oh, we're going out to dinner. We all want to take the same car kind of thing. Not if I was going to be on any kind of lengthy trip at all.
Yeah. I set, I'm 5'10", 5'11", depending on the time of day. And I set, the driver's seat where I would normally have it. And the second row seats slide forward and back as well. And actually there's 3 segments to the second row seat. It's kind of a 40-20-40 split. Mm-hmm. So I set the second row seat behind me so that I could sit behind myself with, like an inch or so of knee clearance. And then I was able to get into the third row and also, not have to splay my knees out around the seat. I had, my knees just fit, but my head was rubbing the headliner in the back. So the third row, mostly for kids, adults in a pinch, for a short trip.
Yeah.
But to what you're saying about, leather versus Nordico, personally, my preference would be the wool blend seats.
The wool blend seats are fabulous.
Yeah.
You know what? And they do such a good job at it. I've seen other seats where they've done like wool things and has too much of a nap to it. And I feel like that's just going to be like a crumb and dirt magnet. These are wool blend seats. It's like that. They're just beautiful. They're so nice. And they add warmth to the vehicle because it's fabric instead of the leather. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, they've had those on, some of their other models for a couple of years now. And I really like them. It's actually a blend of wool and recycled polyester.
Which is the crazy part. You look at it, you think in your head, you're like, polyester. No.
It
You look at
looks and feels like wool.
right? Where the Nordico, isn't quite leather.
Yeah.
This, if they just said wool, you would believe 100% there was nothing but wool in there. You have no idea that there's anything other than beautiful wool fibers in that. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it feels so nice. I like that. I would probably, if I was buying an EX90 right now today, that's the interior I would pick.
And my main complaint about the interior,
Yes.
the window switches on the driver's door.
You didn't like
This is a car that starts at $80,000, which, in and of itself, obviously not cheap, but it's also, not crazy expensive, when you compare it against its segment. When you look at stuff like the BMW iX, Audi e-trons, Mercedes EQS SUV, like compared to an EQS, it starts like $25,000 cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, for a luxury, large luxury SUV, electric SUV, it's actually not a crazy price.
Yeah.
But if you're going to charge $80,000, why are you cheaping out by eliminating one switch? They've copied that stupid thing that Volkswagen did with only having 2 window switches and then another switch to select between front and rear windows. Come on.
I love that this is like sent Sam over the edge. I've had enough. The window switches. That's my deal breaker. Well, that's fair because my deal breaker are vents that you have to adjust in the infotainment. So I hear you.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, this has manual vents. So
it does. You can adjust.
They got that part right.
Like a normal human. It's just that that's that. I don't know why they do that. Is it the interest of not having as many buttons? You cannot convince me there's a reason that any consumer is going to want. They can do marketing speak, but I don't believe any of it. I don't believe any of it.
I mean, you're gonna save maybe 50 cents or $1 at most.
I feel like that.
I mean, you still have 3 switches because you still have to have the selector for front and rear.
Front and rear, yes.
So it's just dumb.
I don't get it.
On an $80,000 to $90,000 car.
Yeah,
dumb. Really
I agree.
Dumb.
I agree. I overall, I liked it though. I mean, I thought even for $80,000, it's not cheap. That's for the standard one is 80. If you go with the performance trim, the Ultra, it gets up to 80, just like 84.3, I think is about where it is. So it's definitely in luxury car territory. But one of the things I thought, it's an EV, so I get that it's quiet because it's an EV, but I thought it was exceptionally quiet even for an EV. Like the road noise, the wind noise, it was such a quiet car. The stuff they did to eliminate the noise, NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, what they did to make that car quiet is remarkably so. It's like you don't hear anything outside the windows. I love that. Super relaxing.
Yeah. Well, back in March when I went to NVIDIA GTC, I interviewed Alwyn Beckenes there, who was the head of software at Volvo.
Okay.
And, they had an EX90 on the show floor at GTC. And, the typical trade show conference, floor, a lot of cacophony, a lot of people talking all around. Yeah. It's pretty loud, too loud to do an interview there. But so Alwyn and I hopped in the EX90 and we sat in there. As soon as we closed the doors, it's like it all disappeared.
Right.
Yeah.
They did a remarkable job. And when I first said, I'm like, oh, it's really quiet. Everyone's like, well, it's an EV. Of course it's quiet. I'm like, no. There's still other noises that don't get eliminated just because you don't have an engine. Somehow the EV90, they got rid of them all. It's like, silence.
With an engine, it tends to mask a lot of other noises.
It does. So you hear things you wouldn't normally hear. Suddenly you hear the sound of the tires. You hear the wind. You'll hear the wind going over things like side view mirrors. Any place where the aerodynamics is not good and there's like turbulence in the airflow of the car, you hear it suddenly because you didn't hear it before because you're listening to the engine. Mm-hmm. So there's still a lot of noise that you can hear. And there's no noise. It's a quiet car.
Yeah, it was really nice. The EX90 was actually supposed to launch almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And it was delayed, as was the Polestar 3, because they were having problems with the software.
Software issues. I remember that.
Built an all new software platform for this, new electronics. And so this was, it's been delayed almost a year now since its original intended launch date. And part of what they've been working on, in addition to the core software platform, is all the ADAS stuff. The EX90 is the first Volvo to come with a LiDAR sensor. So you'll see a hump up above a little hump above the windshield. That's for the Luminar LiDAR sensor. And eventually, they're going to have hands-free driving capability, and they want to get to fully automated highway driving, so you can, take your hands and your eyes off the wheel, when you're driving on the highway, and just, the car will take care of it for you. And enhanced automatic emergency braking systems, all with the LiDAR. They've also got 8 cameras. So there's 4 lower res cameras for the surround view, and then 4 8 megapixel cameras that are used, as part of the ADAS stuff. So like on the mirror housings on the arms, there's 2 cameras on each of those. There's 2 that are facing back. They're the high res cameras, and then the 2 lower res cameras that are pointing down. And there's 2 more above, just below the LiDAR behind the windshield, wide angle and a long range camera. None of that stuff works right now. Right now, what you get is basically the same pilot assist that they've had in the EX or in the XC90 and other Volvos for the last 6-7 years. So it's hands-on lane centering. Works basically the same. It's okay. It's not great, but it's fine. And they also have lane change on demand, which, did you try it? Did you try the lane change on demand?
I did not play around with it. No, I'll be honest, I did not.
I did.
What did you think?
Well, first of all, if you have a hands-free, or if you have a hands-on system like what you have right now, so you can't even go hands-free, tapping the turn signal to have it do a lane change for you is kind of pointless, because your hands are already on the wheel.
You're doing the turn signal job. You're doing what you do anyway. Yeah.
And the way it's set up is, if you apply any resistance to the wheel, when it tries to do the lane change, it basically cancels the lane change. And so what we found was maybe 1 time out of 5, maybe 1 time out of 10, when I would tap the turn signal, I try to go really light on the steering wheel, let it go. It would actually execute the lane change. And I think a couple things there. Some of it was the resistance on the steering wheel. Some of it was, perhaps being a little conservative in terms of the size of gap it was looking for. So that's basically kind of useless. Once it gets to the hands-free system, which hopefully will be sometime next year, and they'll push that out via an over-the-air update, along with other upgrades, that will become more useful, like it is on Super Cruise or Blue Cruise. But for now, it's not really useful at all. Overall, how'd you like driving it?
I like driving it. I was pleased with it. I thought it was, and we were driving the higher performance version, so it's a responsive vehicle. I think, and I thought it handled well. It's not a sporty car per se, but it still has that instant EV like zoom, because when you mash on the accelerator, I still want to say gas pedal. When you mash on the accelerator, I still found that it was fun to drive. I enjoyed it. I don't think someone's buying an electric 3-row Volvo as a performance vehicle. It's not like a Lucid sedan or something that you're looking at.
That's what the Polestar 3 is for.
Yeah, see, exactly. So for what the purpose for this one is, I'm pleased with it. I thought it was nice drive and I enjoyed it. What about you?
I did too. It was very pleasant to drive. For a vehicle that weighs 6,200 pounds, it felt surprisingly nimble on the twisty mountain roads that we spent quite a bit of time on. So it did fine. Now, one thing because this was a global drive program, and they had North Americans coming in first week and then Europeans the following week and other regions. I think they were going to be out there for like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah, that was a long time.
Yeah. They just equipped all the cars with the European spec summer tires. So for North America, we're going to get all season tires. There's 3 different wheel sizes. There's a 20, a 21, and a 22-inch wheel. North America will get only all season tires. In Europe, they're using summer tires and winter tires. So the cars we were driving all had the summer tires. So the handling is probably slightly better than what we would get here under normal conditions, but it was still fine. I mean, it was The ones we drove also, again, were the Ultra. So they have the Plus and the Ultra trim levels. The Ultra gets 4-wheel active air suspension. The Plus gets seal coil springs. And one of the interesting features of the air suspension, in the rear cargo area, there's a button you can press that will actually lower the rear end down, so you get a lower liftover height to load up the cargo.
Cool. You can, like when you're back there and you suddenly realize this is too high, bzz, let's bring it down.
Yeah, so that's a handy feature. Rear cargo area with the third seat up is a little on the small side.
Yeah.
But you can, if you're not carrying extra passengers, you can drop those seats down, and it opens it up quite a bit. There's also small frunk area that'll hold your charging cable, and a duffel bag or a backpack can fit in there as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's still a work in progress. There's still a lot of software stuff a lot of features that aren't done yet.
Sam, did you get a chance to drive the EX30?
Yes, I did.
What do you like better?
If I was spending my money, I have no need for such a large vehicle, so I would buy an EX30.
You would buy the EX30?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, it's my use case. I don't need, a big 3-row SUV.
Yeah.
Julie and I are empty nesters. At worst, we might have a couple of dogs, and the EX30 will easily accommodate a couple of corgis.
Yeah, a couple of corgis. Just load it full of corgis.
Or a couple of adults, if we wanted to take somebody, or if our kids are visiting.
We need to measure the cargo area in corgis. This would hold 4 corgis. This would hold 6 corgis.
Well, I use my paddleboard as my cargo area measurement.
The cargo area measurement. Okay, fair enough.
I'm pretty sure that the paddleboard will not. Actually, yeah, no, it'll fit.
That would fit the EX30. You think?
Yeah, it'll fit.
Yeah.
So I have an inflatable paddleboard. Roll it up and it goes into it's like a big backpack.
Yeah. You can fit that in there.
Yeah, it'll fit. I mean, I can fit. Let's put it this way: I could fit it in the cargo area of a Hyundai Veloster N.
Oh, then you can fit it in the EX30 for sure.
Or in the trunk of a Corvette, a C8 Corvette.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put it in there in the bag. I had to take it out of the bag and just put the board and the paddle in there. But it fits. Yeah,
but you did
able to close it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, the paddle board will fit back here with the third row in place. So yeah, that's as long as it does that, I'm good. But yeah, no, if I was buying for myself, or for my wife, it would be the EX30. Okay,
fair enough.
Mike, there's also an EX60 coming, which is based on the same platform as the EX90.
Is there an ETA on that though? Is that even further?
It should be out sometime in 25.
So next year, theoretically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they told us, that when I visited the Charleston plant where they build the EX90 and the Polestar 3, that the third model going in there is going to be the EX60, and so it'll be probably out sometime next year.
All right, that'll be a good one.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more. And
let's talk about Chrysler. Poor Chrysler.
No. Tell me about the Equinox.
Oh, we're not going to talk about Chrysler. Poor Chrysler. So
okay, we can talk about Chrysler.
No. I just feel so bad for Chrysler. So the Chevy Equinox, they have a new Chevy Equinox that has just come out. And I had the chance to drive it recently. I am generally not a huge fan of Chevy interiors. I always find them sort of lackluster, not impressed. I'm trying to be nice. I'm not overly impressed with them. I really like what they did with the Equinox. You cannot. Did you drive this at all, Sam? I don't know if you drove this. You did not. Okay.
No, because the drive was happening while I was in Charleston.
Okay. They have done improvements to the materials and the design in this that are dramatic. It looks so much better. It's more comfortable. They upgrade stuff. But I like the last one, I just was not, I'm like, okay, it's fine. It's fine. This one, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Especially they have 3 different trims and it's in the RS, which is like their sportier trim. They have all
sporty-ish.
Sporty-ish. Yeah. Sporty looks.
Yeah.
It has all these red accents that kind of go around, like almost like around your shoulders, like the shoulder area on the back of the seats. There's red stitching. There's even like blue stitching in there, but it looks good and it's comfortable. The seats are very, very comfortable. And they even like when you look at the dashboard, where it would just have been in the past, like boring black plastic, like piano black. Ugh, it's red. It's got this like dark, dark, rich ruby red color to it. It just gives it some visual appeal that the old one completely lacked. So I was really, truly impressed with the changes that they made to the interior. In terms of driving, it's got an updated 1.5 liter turbo 4. It's 175 horsepower. Front wheel drive trims give you 184 pound feet of torque. And they get a CVT. All wheel drive trims, 203 pound feet of torque, and they get an 8-speed. So they change up the transmission type depending on whether you go with front wheel drive or all wheel drive. I liked the 8-speed. It's not. The thing is, this is not a performance car at all. I mean, it's not going to be this really aggressive drive, but it is nice to drive. It was fine. I didn't find that it was, as I hit the gas and wanted to accelerate, that it was too slow. I didn't find that it was laggy. And it does get really good fuel economy. For the all-wheel drive, it's City Highway 2429, City Highway. For the front-wheel drive, it's 2628. Not bad for a decent size 2-row SUV. And they have, so like they also now have an active trim, active without the E on the end, just to mess with me and make my autocorrect freak out. I'm like, no, ACTIV is what I meant to type. And they have contrasting roof available. Like comes with a white roof that you can get. And this color, I believe, is called cacti. This is like light green. Looks really good.
Color.
It's a great color. And it's even like, I looked at the pictures that they provided. I looked at the pictures that I took, even better for real, like in real life. In fact, somebody had stopped to get coffee randomly. And they said when they pulled up in that one, everyone's like, oh my gosh, what, like people wanted to know what it was. They didn't know what the car was. And the color and the design actually attracted attention, which is something I don't know that has ever been said about an Equinox ever in the history of ever. Right. So it really looks really good. And it's still affordably priced. The base LT is just under 30. The RS and Active are both 34. So they're the same price. You're just sort of getting two different variants. So not crazy expensive. You know, and you can, if you want the all-wheel drive, add $2,000 to any of those. So it's not, I feel like this is a great option for someone who wants those 2 rows, who wants something that looks good, who doesn't need or can afford fancy, but it doesn't feel like a cheap car. Like I felt before, like it felt a little cheap inside. It doesn't feel that way anymore. They made it not feel cheap. And I think that's a big deal. That's definitely like the aesthetic changes that they did to this are huge. They're huge.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that helped is, Chevrolet and GMC is doing kind of the same thing. They, across their models, especially like their SUVs and pickups, they're, rather than having, different screens, a lot of different components on all these vehicles, you can see that there's a bunch of components that they are reusing across different models. But they are more premium components, but they're, by reusing them across multiple models, they're probably getting some extra economies of scale, saving some cost. So, for example, in this gas Equinox, even on the base, $30,000 one, the LT, you get a 17-inch, diagonal touchscreen for the infotainment system, and then an 11-inch instrument cluster display. That's the same setup that you get in the Equinox EV. It's in the Blazer EV. It's in the Silverado EV, and it's also in the Traverse. They're all using the same screens, and then also, other details like the circular vents at the ends of the dashboard. Those are the same ones that are in the Blazer,
They are.
the Equinox, and it gives it a little more flair, a little more interest. Last year when we were in Hawaii, I had an Equinox, the previous gen Equinox, as a rental car that my wife and I were driving around, and like you said, it felt cheap. I sat in this one at the backgrounder earlier this year, and it feels a lot better. It looks a lot better.
Right. And I'm okay with them reusing those components. Like I don't need to see a completely new and different air vent in every single car. Like if you're going to keep some things the same across your lineup, but you're going to change stuff to, like, if that allows you to make other things better, like if I have to have the same vent on 4 different cars, but that lets you have better materials in all 4 of those cars, I'm all for it. Like, I think it's a happy medium, I guess, that I'm okay with.
Yeah. What I think what's changed is that it used to be that GM would do stuff like that, but they would design these components for the cheap car and then use them in the expensive ones.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of the other way around. They've found a better balance, so
Yeah.
you've got something that feels a little nicer, looks a little nicer, more premium, and then using that across the lineup. And so I think that will be much more appealing to customers.
Yeah, I think they really did a great job with this. Like sometimes when they tell you that they've improved the interior and they've made it better, you sit down and you look at it and you're like, well, you changed the gray to dark gray and you changed the tan to beige, and I don't see any other difference. They're not really dramatic. This one, when I looked at it, it was dramatically different than what the old one was. The old one, like you said, it just felt like a cheap car. I couldn't recommend it to somebody who wanted a nice, pleasant car inside because this is neither of those things. It just feels cheap. Now it feels really nice. Now I could recommend this. It's an affordable, nice car as long as performance is not your priority. If you're not like looking for that, it's fine. It drives nicely, but yeah, beautiful interior. Like, well done. Good job, Chevy.
Yeah. Probably the one downside is the lack of a hybrid option in here. When you look at the competitive set, the Nissan Rogue is about the only one that doesn't offer a hybrid. You get RAV4, CR-V, Escape, the Hyundais and Kias, the Tucson and the Sportage. They all have hybrid and in many cases most cases plug-in hybrids as well.
Yeah.
The Rogue is about the Rogue and the Mazda CX-5 are about the only ones in this size class that don't have hybrids. And so that's kind of disappointing. Although, they do have the Equinox EV, but that's actually, even though it's the same nameplate,
right,
kind of a size class up from this. It's like 6 inches longer. But I like the Equinox EV though.
And they're saying, I was just double checking because I knew that they had commented on a story we wrote. GM's going to bring the PHEV to North America in 2027. That's when they're going to start doing PHEVs, but they haven't said which segments or nameplates will be offered. So we don't know even. We know that they're going to get PHEVs, but we don't know what now they have an Equinox that was developed for China. Mm-hmm. But they still have not committed to we're going to give you some in 2027 let's call it almost 25. So a couple years away, but which ones? It's like the N74. What's the engine on that Hyundai? We don't know yet.
For what it's worth, when I went to the backgrounder for the GMC Terrain, which is the same vehicle,
right.
About a month and a half ago, I asked about hybrid or plug-in hybrid options, and I also asked if they're going to do a Terrain EV, and they said no, there's no plans for a Terrain EV. For hybrids, what they said was for model year 25 and 26, because for the Terrain, they're launching with the base trim level of the Terrain for model year 25. Yeah. It's going to be a shorter model year run. And then sometime mid 25, they'll switch over to the 26 models. That's when they get the Denali and the AT4. Right. The elevation is the base trim. And then the Denali and AT4 for model year 26, they're all going to use the same 1.5 liter, 175 horsepower for model. And I said, well, what about for model year 27? He said, nothing to discuss yet.
Oh,
so
that means
what we might see is the plug-in hybrid in the Terrain, and then maybe not in the Equinox because you've got Equinox EV. So kind of mixing.
So you get the EV for the Equinox, but you get the plug-in hybrid for Terrain. That's a strategy. Could be. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So no plug-in hybrid though, and no hybrid. Wah.
All right. Well, how about Chrysler? Let's talk about Chrysler.
So can I just tell you, it makes me sad. Chrysler makes me sad. It's like, it's hard to see a brand that has the kind of history. There's a history to that brand. They didn't start it last week. There's history to that brand. And right now, there's a Pacifica. That's it.
Yeah.
So when Carlos Tavares says, hey, we might get rid of brands that aren't profitable or don't make sense, and we're going to axe them and who knows which, and everyone does that like, oh God, what's going to go? The supposition is, well, they've only got one car. Let's kick Chrysler to the curb. Now, they haven't said anything. This is just the automotive speculation. Nobody knows what or if could get kicked to the curb. But Walter P. Chrysler's great-grandson wrote him a letter like to Tavares and said, like, hey, I would like to propose a way to like make these brands, Chrysler and Dodge specifically, survive past whatever iteration Stellantis is in the middle of right now. Because he would like to see it survive. He wants to try and sort of rescue it from the Europeans that he perceives don't have an appreciation for it and just want to kick the can down the road and say, we don't need those. I somehow find out, I'm like, oh, come on, save the company. Because there's some history there. And I can't imagine what it's like to know that your great-grandfather, right, starts a company like this. It becomes this huge company that's huge and has all of this heritage and history and does these amazing things through the years, and eventually sort of just gets eaten up and cast aside, maybe because it's just not being given the love and attention that it needs in the midst of being one of, I don't even know, how many brands do they
14.
have all told? 14 brands. Yeah. So I like, come on, save it. I want him to save it. I want him to save it, Sam.
Yeah. I would love to see Chrysler and Dodge survive as well. I'm not sure that, selling the brands to Frank Rhodes would necessarily be the way to make that happen. I'm not sure what the business plan is, for him to take those and, build out those brands again into full blown, full line automakers. So, and it's not clear where the financing is going to come from, how he's going to afford to, it becomes like any other automotive startup, except with, established brand names. And it's not at all clear, how he avoids the fate of 99% of automotive startups, which is,
right,
ending up being defunct again. There on Friday, Stellantis did issue a brief statement in response to the proposal to sell the Chrysler and Dodge brands. Yeah. I'll read it to you in full. Stellantis acknowledges that the interest in its North American brands and reaffirms the company's commitment to its entire portfolio of 14 powerful, iconic brands, which were each given a 10-year time frame to build a profitable and sustainable business. Like the Jeep and Ram brands, Chrysler and Dodge are at the forefront of Stellantis' transformation to clean mobility, benefiting from the group's cutting-edge technology and scale. The company is not pursuing splitting off any of its brands.
Now, that's not what Tavares said before. He said he would he did in his little thing not that long ago say, well, if you're not making money, we're going to get rid of you. That's why everyone's panicking. He really said it. And everyone's like, well, what's not making money? What's the ones that you would cut? Because it's not profitable enough given the current economic winds. And everyone's, I don't know. When was 10 years? When did that start? When did that clock?
Stellantis was created in 2021. So we're 3 years into it now.
7 years. What can they do in 7 years to turn one car at Chrysler into a profitable, vibrant brand?
when I first talked to Chris Fuel, who's the CEO of the Chrysler brand a couple of years ago, the target then was to expand the Chrysler brand out to 4 to 6 models by about 2027.
Okay, it's almost 2025. We have one.
Yes, we have nothing. We actually have fewer models now than we had when I spoke to her 2 years ago.
Because we still had the 200 then, right?
Well, no, we had the 300. The 200 went away about 2018 or 19.
Sorry, I got the wrong car. We
had the 300 and the Pacifica, and now we're down to just Pacifica.
So the model line has decreased by 50% since that conversation. Yeah, so this doesn't bode well. There's going to have
Dodge at least has product in the, they've got 2 models now, and they've got, more product in the pipeline. In fact, on Wednesday morning when I was driving to the airport, I saw 2 Charger Daytonas and a Wagoneer S driving along I-94. So,
okay. That's something.
yeah. So they exist.
They exist.
They should be in production soon. Ish.
Yeah. It's just, you know what it is? I think I watch too many of those shows on TV where they talk about the history of the American automotive industry, and they show these guys who, fought to create the vehicles they created and what it took to make them go and make the companies thrive, and the partnerships and the backstabbing and everything else. And I'm like, oh man, to make it all this way. And then just through a variety of mergers and whatever, suddenly have like, well, now this is the least important brand in our portfolio. So done.
Yeah.
And let's say they're not, but let's see in 7 years.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been almost 2 hours now.
Okay.
And it's just the two of us. So I've got a couple of interviews I'm going to tack on the end here. There will be more interviews coming over the next couple of weeks. But I talked the other day with Austin Russell, the CEO of Luminar Technologies, the supplier of Volvo's LiDAR, and they will also be supplying Mercedes-Benz next year and Nissan at some point in the future, as well as other manufacturers. So Austin and I had a good conversation. And then I also had a chat with Thomas Broberg, who's senior technical advisor for safety at Volvo. And we talked about a bunch of the stuff they're doing safety-wise on the EX90. So those will be coming out. So, keep listening, and those will be here right after we say goodbye. And we will talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.
And now my conversation with Austin Russell, CEO and founder of Luminar Technologies. Well, I think the first time that I saw you, I didn't actually talk to you at that time. I think it was at the 2018 LA Auto Show, Automobility. You were on stage. You went up on stage at that time with Håkan Samuelsson, who was then the CEO prior to Jim Rowan of Volvo. And that was the first. I think that was probably the first time in public that Luminar and Volvo talked about the collaboration you were doing. And I remember one of the distinctive things that you talked about at the time was using the LiDAR to do gait detection of pedestrians. Because you've got so much resolution from the LiDAR, and there's detailed information about where people are in physical space relative to the vehicle, much more than you can get from trying to do this with a camera, or at least with monovision cameras. I guess, for our audience, talk a little bit about, what the collaboration has been like with Volvo, what Luminar's role has been, what Volvo's role has been, and then how you've worked together, and what you've been developing over the last 6 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's right. Is that I think the first kind of major public unveiling of some of the work we were doing with Volvo was back in 2018. LA auto conference, or the auto show that was happening at the time, Automobility. And I think that was part of the inspiration, was how do you start already making a difference in terms of the safety impact and ultimately enabling autonomy, with this kind of LiDAR technology that can have, such dramatic advantages over, these camera-based systems that have historically been used for ADAS, to be able to step up the game there. And sorry, by the way, quick one. Is the podcast, is it just audio or is it video?
Just audio.
Also, just audio. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, got it.
So don't worry.
So
don't worry about audio.
Okay, it's okay. It's cool if it was. I was just curious. But yeah, so we've been working with Volvo since then to be able to really industrialize the technology that we've had and be able to get it to a point of where it can go successfully into series production to global automotive standards, which is exactly what we've been able to do together. And that's, of course, starting with this, their new main vehicle launch, the EX90 as a flagship, to showcase what's possible and do so at global scale, across US, Europe, China, and beyond. And that's already now started production. And over time, I think we're going to continue to see, development and advancements of features that make the car safer and safer and safer with each update, as well as enabling more assisted and autonomous-like features. So that vision has really come to a head of realization now as kind of this major milestone of achieving the start of production. And I think this is where Volvo is standalone in successfully bringing something to production at this level at global scale in a world where countless automakers or autonomous vehicle companies, made promises over the years that they weren't able to successfully deliver on. And I think that's what makes Luminar special. That's what makes Volvo special in this respect, by being able to pull that off successfully. And if you notice, I mean, the important part is the stuff they're talking about today, it does harken all the way back to, 2018 when they were first talking about, hey, how can you model, the movements of different pedestrians? How can you model, vehicles better? How can you get a true ground truth understanding of exactly what's going on around you? And that's exactly what the LiDAR is delivering by getting centimeter level precision, accurate measurements of everything that's going on around you in the environment in true 3D, rather than historically trying to use cameras to guess where things are. And sometimes being right, sometimes being wrong. And that doesn't work in these kinds of safety critical applications and ultimately enabling autonomy.
So in the relationship between Luminar and Volvo, I think you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you mainly work with Zenseact, which is the unit of Volvo is focused on software development for a lot of their vehicle applications. Besides bringing the hardware, I think you also bring some software to the table as well in that relationship. Can you talk about that? What you're doing as far as the perception software?
Yeah. So when it comes to the overall collaboration with Volvo, I mean, we work at all dimensions with them. When it comes to, the fundamentals of the components, to, the hardware platform, to the firmware systems, to the integration into the vehicle, to the cooling systems, to the software systems, to even, exploring things in the future like, insurance and beyond, when it comes. So it really is at all touch points. And this is something that I think is also very unique for Luminar and unique, I would say, in the industry more broadly. Usually a lot of people have a very specific niche that they can do and they're good at. In this case, we are truly developing a special technology stack, that's relevant for Volvo, of course, and among other automakers, in a broader capacity, that has been successful in proving out successful. You can make this happen. And, there's been about, on the order of $2 billion, of development into this core technology platform to successfully prove this and make this happen. And it goes to show, just even with the best technologies, how hard it is to be able to successfully industrialize these level of capabilities and enable Volvo to achieve, what could be arguably the safest car out on the road in automotive history. So that's something that all of that has to add up. When it comes to the software side, that's something that we have had a collaboration with, originally with a division they had called Zenuity, that ultimately morphed into Zenseact. And, we've collaborated with them from a software standpoint to help contribute different parts to the stack to help successfully enable, the full utilization of the LiDAR capabilities in multiple environments. And, I don't think we need to talk through the specifics about which parts of that, but we sort of offer a lot of the components of the software development work we do a la carte. And I would say about on the order of, where the majority of the software code that we write does get, implemented in one way or another or utilized by OEMs, for Volvo and beyond.
So what, for the audience that is not familiar with Luminar or perhaps even LiDAR in general, can you explain a little bit about what it is about the Luminar LiDAR design that is distinct and perhaps gives it some advantages, and what are some of the challenges with implementing LiDAR on a vehicle?
Yeah. So just kind of going back to 101 here. So LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It's basically using lasers to be able to successfully measure exactly how far away every object is out in the field of view. And as I mentioned, in our case, down to centimeter level precision. And with the system that's, implemented with Volvo, you can do that very successfully for almost any object, even out to 250 meters and beyond. So that's what enables us to be able to have that true understanding of what's going on in the environment that can allow the car to be able to make safe decisions when it comes to safety critical maneuvers, as well as more broadly, ultimately enabling autonomous driving. So that's where LiDAR becomes that fundamental linchpin, because in the world of autonomy and next generation safety, while the existing systems can work, so to say, 99% of the time, it's really all about that last 1% in terms of the safety and reliability, because, you can't make those kinds of mistakes. You need to have the level of confidence to make decisions where the car can make decisions to take over from the driver. And when it comes to autonomous driving, for example, hitting 1 out of every 100 people that you see, is not exactly an option.
Yeah.
So, you have to have 10 nines worth of reliability on the back end of that in order to be able to truly be safe and significantly greater in capability than a human. So that's really where the LiDAR comes into play to enable that. Whereas historically with camera-based setups, it's been 2D images that software systems and AI algorithms have to guess where objects are in the field of view. In the case of the LiDAR, when you apply those same kinds of algorithms, you truly know where the objects are in the first place. And that makes all the difference when it comes to the end capabilities of what the car can enable you to do. And that really comes down into two discrete buckets. One is when it comes to enhancing safety, when the driver is in charge of the vehicle, and two is starting to enable more advanced assisted and autonomous driving features. When it comes to the fundamental safety aspect, the objective is to be able to significantly reduce the number of accidents and vehicle collisions that happen, while at the same time, when they do happen, to significantly reduce the severity and injury or fatality rate of those kinds of accidents. And that is something that I think is absolutely critical for society in a world where we currently lose on the order of 1.5 million lives every year due to vehicle accidents. One of the, if not the leading cause of death between ages 1 and 44. And this is where Volvo has taken a leadership position to be able to help solve that problem, just as they did back in the day, in 1959, with the invention of the modern seatbelt, the 3-point seatbelt. They're the first to introduce everything from certain types of advanced airbags all the way to, even the mobile eye camera system, for advanced assisted driving and better safety features. And I think that trend is going to continue, and no different with Luminar and the LiDAR system, showcasing what's possible in a technology that can ultimately become standardized throughout the broader industry, just as all those other technologies have from a safety perspective. And ultimately, as autonomous driving over the course of the next decade becomes more prevalent, then that becomes another driver as well behind the significance of what LiDAR can do and what it can enable. So those two things make all the difference. The key distinction with our technology in what has made it so different than other LiDARs back in the day and even today is that, you may have seen some of those kinds of roof racks on, what you colloquially call, autonomous vehicles out on the road for these autonomous test cars that, you can see deployed in, the San Francisco Bay Area or, elsewhere. And, those are $100,000, systems and sensors and a supercomputer in the trunk that is required to be able to collect data from the environment in 3D, process that data, and be able to make safety or even autonomous driving decisions. The key distinction here in the big bet that we had and the one that Volvo had too was all about not trying to build a custom vehicle to try and replace drivers and put some $100,000 roof rack on it to make that happen. The goal was to get this level of technology into the hands of the everyday consumer on the existing production vehicles to already start realizing the benefits of the next generation safety and autonomy, where you don't have to replace every driver on the road to do that. Because that's something that may happen in the future, but that's decades away if that's the case. And I think it's important to take a very realistic view of that. So this is the business model that we went down, and the model that we saw for the greatest impact for society. And I think that's really where a lot of the rest of the industry has been trying to pivot to as well, because you can see this example where we've taken that $100,000 type spinning sensor on the roof of the car to integrating it towards a sleek $1,000 sensing system and technology that can see at very long range, even better performance than those kinds of systems historically, using this 1550 nanometer wavelength of light versus, a traditional 905 nanometer wavelength of light. We custom developed it from the ground up at the chip level up. We make, dozens of our own chips over the years and, multiple implemented, in the LiDAR that makes it possible. And that's what successfully is powering the future of the sensing technology roadmap for folks like Volvo and beyond to make that possible.
So, even at $1,000, while it's, a fraction of what, some of those old spinning LiDARs cost, it's not a trivial amount of money. And the EX90, lovely car, but, it starts at $80,000. What kind of time frame do you see for getting to a point where this technology can really go broad, on average consumer vehicles that sell in the millions of units a year or tens of millions a year?
Absolutely. And, we want to make sure to kind of bound the problem overall is that I think from a fundamental safety and autonomy standpoint, these are the kinds of features that can truly define and differentiate a vehicle, versus a lot of the rest of the landscape. And we'll say that for $1,000, in the case of like a Volvo vehicle, it's close to 1% of the cost of the vehicle. For a mainstream vehicle, it may be closer to 2% of the cost of the vehicle, even at that benchmark. So I would say if you take a look at the overall value proposition, it's still quite strong even today. That said, we're not stopping there. And, we've even said publicly that, we have this roadmap and now even getting to a stage of where the core component cost in us is approaching, on the order of $100 for our core LiDAR components and semiconductor technologies around this. So, there's going to be kind of a Moore's Law equivalent of the LiDAR cost, $500 and less. That makes it even easier in that 1% range, of total cost to be able to be adopted in a mainstream capacity. And that's what we're able to deliver with the next generation LiDAR technology called Luminar Halo, that goes beyond this Iris LiDAR family of technologies that we developed. And that's something that I think you'll start to see on all of these next generation vehicles beyond. Of course, the critical part is that you have to have this here today to start collecting the data, developing the software systems, generating the economies of scale that are needed to make that happen and make that possible. And that's exactly what we're doing successfully with this deployment. And the important part is, we have 25, commercial programs that we've been implemented into and been awarded. This is the first launch and start of production for the first vehicle of those 25. And that's something that I think we're going to see a massive cascade and flurry of subsequent additional vehicle launches over the course of the next couple years or few years that follow in that footsteps as we've now successfully launched this first implementation. The first one's always the hardest. And then, it's the same technology, the same product that gets in the same platform that gets implemented across all those other vehicle lines. So that's the significance there. And I think that that's where naturally, of course, you'll see this start on, a little bit of the higher end vehicle side. As with all these kinds of new vehicle technology and as with other kinds of advanced technologies and safety technologies in the past, and then ultimately start to cascade down to other kinds of mainstream automakers. The important point here is that I think the level and the speed of adoption of the technology for the luxury automakers and ultimately even the mainstream automakers is arguably faster than any other kinds of modern, automotive technology or even historical automotive technology in automotive history. And the reason for that is that you start to see, over the course of even just a decade, which in automotive years, by the way, a decade is like one major product and platform cycle, so we have to kind of calibrate here, is that you already start to see the majority of major automakers are now including, Luminar or some kind of long-range LiDAR, into their roadmaps, by the end of the decade. And that's something that already is making a huge difference. You take a look historically at the automotive adoption cycles. Long lead times, very high barrier to entry, but also very high barrier to exit, and very large scale and massive economics in the back end of this. It generally can take as much as 20 years, for a full adoption cycle of a kind of technology. You take a look historically at seat belts, at airbags, at radar systems, at mobile eye camera systems, from the first time of implementation to when it ultimately became standardized throughout the broader automotive industry. It's a couple of decades. And I think we're actually seeing an acceleration on this. And I think that's also a very important perspective to put into. A lot of times we get colored by, the adoption cycles for new technology, say like in the smartphone industry, which is working on completely different kinds of cycles, than say something like the automotive industry. In part just because, cars are incredibly complex. People's lives depend on them. You have to build these massive factories and there's a lot of overhead costs associated with initially doing that, as well as just the lead time and the cycles to do these products is quite different. But significantly, when you're on the right trajectory there, that makes all the difference. And we've seen this historically for everyone from, NVIDIA, with their introduction. By the way, this is the first, scaled global production vehicle that NVIDIA is being introduced on, with their next generation technologies and Orin and everything there. So that's something that's special with us alongside those guys. We also have a partnership with them in close collaboration.
Your current iris sensor is part of the NVIDIA Hyperion 8 reference kit for automated driving. So, over the last couple of years, Luminar's done a lot of demos at various events, various places like CES and IAA in Germany, where you've done demonstrations not with the Volvo vehicle, but with another vehicle equipped with the sensor, but in much the same configuration as it is on the EX90, running it side by side against other vehicles, most notably against Tesla's, doing pedestrian detection and automatic emergency braking. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages that having a LiDAR versus a camera system gives? What is describe what you're able to do on a vehicle that has a LiDAR sensor on it.
Yeah, so I think significantly, by the way, it's not just us, demonstrating these kinds of capabilities anymore. Yes. It's you now also have even third parties that are doing independent studies around the significant benefits of LiDAR, what it means in terms of safety implications on a vehicle, to better quantify that. Because, we can show all day long of how, hey, the car with the LiDAR doesn't hit the kid, and the car without the LiDAR, hits the kid out on the road, which is obviously can create kind of a visceral emotional reaction as it should, in terms of the safety benefits. And then, of course, we all know, traditionally the autonomy benefits that it can deliver. But when it comes down to it, there's actually Swiss Re, the world's second largest reinsurance company, recently released a report that actually showcases, by doing benchmarking studies of a Luminar-equipped vehicle versus the rest of the automotive landscape, and even the best performing camera-equipped vehicles out on the road in terms of the safety difference that I made right off the bat. And what they found is that there is up to a 40%, reduction in, the frequency of collisions and or severity of those collisions when you have a LiDAR implemented on the vehicle, in terms of the kinds of things that it can now see clearly that cameras cannot. And that makes all the difference. And this is versus some of the best performing vehicles out on the road, like a very high end, camera equipped vehicle. So I think that, including some of the brands that you mentioned as well, for that matter. So I think that's where the critical distinction is that with the LiDAR, because you know where everything is from a ground truth standpoint, you can have a much higher confidence with the car's driving systems to be able to take over the steering wheel and braking system in those kinds of situations where an accident is otherwise unavoidable or you're at high risk thereof, to be able to get you out of that situation. And that's exactly the kind of thing that, Volvo can start enabling more of now, that other brands will be able to start enabling more of. as the technology adoption becomes more and more widespread. And this is not something that's purely theoretical, but actually proven out now, not just by us, but even multiple third parties, including the scientific report from Swiss Re in terms of the capabilities. And that's why, the reality is that even for the best drivers, it's easy to become distracted in this day and age. It's easy to make mistakes. It happens to drivers more often than not. For a given vehicle that you own over a 10-year lifespan, you are more likely than not to get into some kind of accident over that vehicle ownership period. And this is exactly where, this kind of LiDAR technology come into play to help get you out of that situation.
So earlier this year, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration published a new federal motor vehicle safety standard that would require automatic emergency braking and significantly enhanced AEB compared to what we have on vehicles today. Today, the systems function at speeds up to about 25 miles an hour, but they really aren't that capable. They're generally camera based, sometimes camera or radar, mostly only work in daylight hours, at relatively low speeds. These new regulations will require the systems to work at speeds up to 90 miles an hour and also function at nighttime in night conditions and with mannequins that are dressed in dark clothing, that sort of thing. Do you think that, I guess, where do you see LiDAR fitting into meeting that standard? Will it be essential, or do you think it'll be possible to meet those requirements with other types of sensors, or will it require LiDAR, do you think?
So with these new regulations, there's a dramatic increase in the speed of operation, as well that's going to be required to perform automatic emergency braking maneuvers, as well as operating at NACS as well. So, that's something that the two major factors that are coming into play, the kinds of conditions are quite challenging. And I think what we're seeing is that from a regulatory and lobbyist perspective, is that a lot of the automakers were, depending on which one you ask, either pleasantly surprised or pleasantly concerned that the U.S. was taking such a strong leadership position when it comes to the future safety of vehicles, which I think is absolutely incredible and unquestionably the right thing to do. So I'd say I think this is one of the best things more broadly to happen with American automotive legislation in, decades, maybe along with the push for cleaner vehicles and other kinds of incentives that have been created along the way. In this case, I think it's probably not even controversial. Who doesn't want to save more lives? The reality is that the problem is not solved until there's zero lives lost on American roads or even roads globally. So when it comes down to it, I think it's essential to keep pushing the envelope. This is a huge first step in that direction. And when it comes to the sensing technologies, I think it's clear that there's really no way to be able to get there with the existing technologies that are out on the road. And people have already been pushing the system for cameras and radar to the maximum capabilities. I mean, there's still, of course, always some room to go, but it's not like people haven't been trying to make the most out of, the technologies that are out there today. And the reality is this requires a true step function in terms of the improvement of capabilities and performance to be able to ultimately deliver on those new requirements that are being introduced and required for every vehicle on U.S. roads come 2029, which in automotive years is right around the corner. So that's huge. And I think this is where automakers are still digesting this massive new regulation that's been passed, and sort of processing the true implication of it. But I think the end implication is clear around the need for the next generation sensing technology. And the only way that you can truly get that level of performance is by, like radio waves with radar, can only get so much resolution. You really do need laser systems to be able to get that level of performance and level of accuracy on the measurements. That's exactly what long-range LiDAR is able to deliver. So there's, of course, no requirement that says, hey, you must use long-range LiDAR, or hey, you must use a certain or Luminar technology or something that's there, or any brand. The requirements are done by increased safety standards overall. But I think that what we're doing is very aligned with that safety mission. We've been able to successfully demonstrate that we've been able to beat and exceed each of those kinds of NHTSA requirements that are there. In addition, which is backed up and supported by third-party studies that were done effectively coincidentally, with some of the new regulations that were coming out. So couldn't be better timing on that. But we have not seen any implementation of any other system that has been able to meet these kinds of requirements. And if you look at basically what the automaker lobbyists are saying, very publicly, is that they do not have a path to solve this problem with their current sets of technology, and would expect there to be on the order of, $2,000 plus of additional cost and content value added to each vehicle in order to meet these new kinds of safety standards, which is consistent with, the kinds of overall cost profile that you would expect with these new kinds of sensing technologies and systems. So it's not, of course, just the LiDAR and that, you need like things like the NVIDIA compute, you need things like, other parts of the system that make it possible. But this is something that's definitely going to be accelerating, I think, the broader trajectory of the industry. And, I think this is such a big step forward that we need to make sure that we want to be publicly pushing the safety message and the industry forward, rather than trying to, in some of these cases, take steps backwards, which is, I think part of the debate, for example, is that, some of the automakers are lobbying of well, we should be able to hit a child at low speeds instead of not at all, because right now we hit them at high speeds. And, sure, you can try and argue that. I think that's
not exactly the kind of thing that consumers would hear and say, oh, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah. It's okay if you hit my kid at 20 miles an hour instead of 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. So, I think that that's absolutely right. And I think it's important that consumers have that visibility, that it doesn't just stay in the backwaters of automotive, but truly understand the implications of what this means. Because, as you said, it doesn't quite sound right. We should be targeting zero pedestrian fatalities.
Yeah. One last thing I want to ask you about that before we close up. The automakers trade group, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, in their comments on the regulation, they highlighted that, with AEB from those kinds of speeds, 60 to 90 miles an hour, vehicles would be braking so aggressively that you actually run the risk of having more rear end collisions from the other cars on the road, the older vehicles on the road that aren't so equipped. Do you think that or things like phantom braking, because it has to be sensitive enough, do we run a risk of that, creating new problems like phantom braking on a wide scale by going down this path, or is the not the intent, but the specific approach that's being called for, is it the right approach?
Yeah, and I think the answer is that without LiDAR, absolutely, that's a major concern. There's going to be phantom braking all over the place and rear-end collisions up, down, left, right. But this is part of the whole point at where the technology is coming into play, because you take the guessing out of the equation. Again, if your car was, hopefully that alert came out there. I'll repeat the sentence. If your car was randomly braking on you from 75 miles an hour to 0 or near 0 out of the blue on every drive, that would end up inherently causing more accidents and collisions, and you'd probably stop driving the car, which is what would happen if you tried to tune the existing technologies towards operating at those higher speeds. The whole point with the LiDAR is you confidently know what's out there. So you don't have those kinds of events. There's not that trade-off. And I think that's really where the commentary comes into play. There is a technical solution for this. It exists here today. Volvo has already been proving it out. Other automakers are proving it out with us and beyond. And that's where there's no longer an argument that there has to be a fundamental trade-off there. And, and that's not to say that that will never happen. I'm sure that there can be instances of where if you brake for a pedestrian that you would have hit, or a bicyclist, or a moose that's out on the road that could have killed you, and then the person behind you doesn't, then sure, there could be some incremental increase in some of the rear end collisions. But I think what you find is that the severity of those collisions and is going to be significantly less, and the fatal implications when they would happen rarely would be quite low. Given there's likely going to be some reaction for the driver behind it. I mean, the obvious ultimate solution is for everyone across the industry to have the technology, with other safety technologies.
It takes a long time to replace the entire vehicle fleet, though.
Exactly. But to try and imply a trade-off to a point of where you shouldn't consider doing that would be absurd with this kind of technology, and that's exactly what it's enabling. And I think again, you can take a look at the studies from third parties that support the same kinds of claims around the massive safety improvements.
All right. Well, I want to be cognizant of your time, and it's always great to talk to you. Any final thoughts you want to share?
No, just say those are the same people that are also trying to lobby to say you should be able to hit folks at lower speeds instead of higher speeds. So you got to take some of it with a grain of salt. But that doesn't matter. The legislation is passed, and that has made the ruling. I think ultimately what will happen is that it would be, the kind of timeline they were talking about, like again, automotive years is wild, in terms of just being 4 or 5 years out from a required implementation. So I think there's probably going to be some ramp up, ultimately.
Yeah, well, there's a
negotiation with automakers.
Yeah, there's always
to get there, and it's going to fundamentally require technology like this in one way or another.
Yeah, there's always a 3-year ramp-in phase for new regulations like this. The first year it's 25% of new vehicles, 50% the second year, and third year it's 100%. So it starts from 2027 is the first year. Then by the end of 2029, all new vehicles need it. So, all right. Well, Austin, I want to thank you for your time, and look forward to the next time we get to chat.
Yeah, excited. Well, thank you, Sam. Great to talk as always, and amazing time with the Volvo EX90 as well. So happy to see that out on the roads, and excited to get mine as well. It's been so many years in the making, and such a strong statement for the broader industry that I know so many in the auto world are excited about.
Yeah, well, I've driven it now. Not all of the features that we've talked about are enabled yet at launch. And they will be gradually rolled out as Volvo validates them and demonstrates that everything is safe. And I look forward to, when all of these kinds of features are available for us to actually evaluate on this vehicle and on others.
Yeah, you're going to have to keep reviewing the car every 6 months.
I think I can do that.
Exactly.
All right. Thank
cheers.
You. All right.
Have a good rest of the day.
Have a great day. Thanks, Nolan.
Bye.
Next up, conversation with Thomas Broberg, Safety Technical Advisor for Volvo. All right, so safety has always been a key thing, a key focus for Volvo going back many, many decades, back to the 1950s, I think, when he introduced the 3-point seatbelt. What is new in terms of safety on the EX90, and what are some of the things that you've had to do specifically in designing a dedicated EV platform?
Well, first of all, with the EX90, we wanted to make the safest Volvo ever.
Uh-huh.
So based on the extensive knowledge that we have from studying real-world accidents, we've put all that knowledge into this. We have 3 parts, I would say, in addressing that. One is how we help protect people. So we have further improved the deformation zone in the front, for instance, with a lower load path that takes more energy than before, and also an upper load path that takes more energy before. So addressing compatibility when you crash into loan vehicles, but also if you crash into underride situations like trucks, trailers, and things like that. Then we have the safety cage, where we have further improved that. And there we actually have the battery, and I can show you that on the display here later. But there we have the opportunity. So we put members, we have structural members, we have structure around the battery, distributing the forces and so that helps improve the safety cage.
So is that part of the unibody architecture?
Yeah, it's part of the battery pack here.
Oh, okay.
Actually an integral part. It's very lower structure.
Okay. So these extrusions that make the outer perimeter of the battery pack?
Yes, and also transfers. Okay. Yeah, we distribute the loads, for instance, inside and behind. So that's actually where we utilized the battery itself to help improve, well, not only to protect the battery, but also to help protect the occupants inside the car. So the safety cage has been further. Then on top of that, you have the restraints, the airbags, belts, and so forth. And the intelligence, the knowledge that we put into that in terms of crashes are diverse, people inside sitting in the cars are very diverse. You need to take all that into account to get an intelligence system, so you know when to activate the airbags and belts. With the deformation zone, we also have a much less accelerations, so we absorb more energy using more of the space, which really gives less forces on the occupants in that sense. But
is that because you don't have a traditional internal combustion engine up here? You have more space to work with?
And actually, if you look at this part, it's not quite a clever part. It's the air tank for the air suspension. But this is also used in crash. And with the higher pressure, we utilize the pressure because that adds to the strength of this part.
So this is this is bolted to the structure itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, what we see here is not entirely representative of the rest of the structure.
There's no structure.
So that's an extra cross-car beam that absorbs. Okay. And
so in crashes, we really want to address sort of the diversity from those aspects. And so the protective part is one. The second, I would say, is that we have the sharpest sensor set inside and outside MM. So we have our driver understanding system that helps us understand the state of the driver. With that information, we can adjust sort of the settings of our ADAS systems. So we know, are you alert or are you not alert? And then we can sort of have the car do things earlier or later, depending on sort of your state. We also have our no one left behind system. So we have radars in the cabin to recognize if you unintentionally leave your car and try to lock it and there's still someone.
I believe there's 7 radar sensors around the perimeter of the roof.
So we have the sharpest sensor set ever and the sharpest algorithms ever.
Okay.
And also from the outside with the sensors, everything from the LiDAR, radars, cameras. We have 360 view. The car has these 360 views, so it knows quite well its surroundings. So we further improved our ADAS functionality. And on top of that, since we have over-the-air upgrades possible, we can improve functionality over time. So the third, I would say, is that the car can actually teach and learn. As we collect data, we can actually learn more about the situations that the car is in and what the driver is.
So is telemetry information from vehicles, customer vehicles, being shared back to Volvo and then aggregated to...
Yeah, we can aggregate that into sort of the research, and we can help improve functionality. So we can upgrade the car based on that. So we'll have a better car over time, which is quite unique.
So
previously we had to wait sort of for each new car to sort of apply functionality. Now we can apply.
But and now you can use some of the electronics to help avoid and mitigate crashes. You mentioned using the driver understanding system, which a lot of manufacturers now already have driver monitor systems using an infrared camera that looks at the driver. But I think Volvo is using that in a much more extensive way.
Yeah, we have done extensive research and a lot of experiments. So we have developed our own algorithm in terms of this. We actually have patent algorithms for this. So it's very unique sort of Volvo knowledge that we put into understanding sort of driver behavior when you're in a good state. And that will continue as well, since we have the possibility to upgrade. The more we learn about sort of driver behavior and the more studies we make, we can implement that over time to help improve the system, which makes, I would say, the system very capable and intelligent to understanding, okay, is this something to act on or is it not something to act on? So it's not becoming annoying to the customer, so you get too many warnings and blanks.
Yeah, so that driver understanding system is not just looking for eye gaze, looking at the road, as many of these systems are currently, but you're actually looking at head position and also the motions, the pattern of motions of the head and neck to try to understand perhaps if the driver's getting drowsy or not feeling well or other things like that.
So we've done extensive studies with drivers on track, of course, and in simulators to understand so that we can recognize sort of what state are you in. You can be tired, you can be stressed. We know also from our studies that 80% of the time you look at the road, 20% you're not, because you're looking at elsewhere. But with all these knowledge put into sort of the context and with the advanced sensing of understanding the surroundings, we can make a much more efficient system in getting more performance of the ADAS functionality, the driver support functionality, and we can improve it over time.
Yeah, I remember about a year and a half ago, I spoke to, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, right now, one of the leaders on that team on the driver understanding system. And one of the things he talked about at the time was even if the driver is watching the road, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're attentive.
No.
You know, you can get into this kind of a haze almost, where your eyes are there, but they're not paying attention,
No.
and you're able to extract other bits of information to try to recognize that.
Yeah.
So when you do recognize that, you mentioned that it can make adjustments to some of the ADAS control.
Internal systems. It can also sort of adjust the other thresholds of when things are being active, when you get a warning, when you activate an auto brake, or when you need to be alerted.
And the cabin sensing, which is, I think, Volvo is one of the first to do that, if not the first, to have the interior cabin radar in a vehicle. For that system, how does that work in terms of alerting the driver? What sorts of alerts can the driver get from that?
Well, first of all, when you try to lock the car, it will not allow you to lock the car. And then
if there's a living person or animal in
the car, all three rows, and then you will have a message in the driver in the center console that someone is there. So just to give you a reminder, when you're not at your best and you're forgetting a loved one inside the car.
And then when that happens, it prevents the car from being locked. But if the driver walks away anyway, what happens then?
Well, then since we have a battery, we will sort of keep the temperature in the car, the climate system, and all of that.
So it's kind of an automatic dog mode. Other manufacturers have done a dog mode where you're doing it automatic. The driver doesn't have to trigger it. If they, for whatever reason, leave someone behind, it will keep the cabin cool so you don't get overheated in there. And that's you're using the radar to detect the motions, the breathing motion. You can detect the raising and lowering of the chest.
It has very high sort of accuracy that system can recognize there. Also, the slightest motions perspective. So,
and I understand it can detect all the seating positions, all three rows, plus the cargo area in the back. So if you leave your dog in the back, it'll still recognize that. In terms of materials used in the structure for safety, what I believe that the perimeter part of the battery pack, for example,
this
is aluminum.
High strength aluminum.
Okay.
And then we're using different grades of steel, from mild steel where we want to have deformational control to absorb energy, to where we don't want to have that much deformation. We go into higher strength steels, all the way up to boron steels.
Okay.
Which is real tough.
So things like the side beams, the B pillars.
Yeah, some of the
where you don't want intrusion at all. Yeah. Okay.
Where and the benefit with boron steel is that you have a lot of strength, but you can get that at low weight. You can have sort of a less. You can have a more efficient structure.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Anything else that we haven't talked about in terms of safety advances for the EX90? And presumably, most of what you've done here will be applied to other future.
I can't talk about it. If you look at history, you can figure out how it works.
I mean, you generally you don't go backwards. If you've got something that works, you want to continue using that and continue to improve on that. So I would assume we'll see most of this in the next generation.
We are continuously working. So there will be more things coming, and as I said, there will be this car will be better over time.
Okay.
Via the air.
Yeah, and you start off with a good structure, and then because of what you're able to do with the software, to again try to avoid or mitigate the impact of crashes, then that's the part that you can continue to improve. So,
yeah,
fantastic. Well, Thomas Broberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what is your title at Volvo?
I work as a technical advisor at the Safety Center.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All the feelings hear about winter tunes.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.